Hafa and good morning, everyone. This public hearing conducted by the Committee on Economic Development, Agriculture, Power and Energy, Utilities, and the Arts is called to order. It is 9:10 a.m. Notice of the hearing was disseminated to all local media outlets on April 26, 2022, with a second notice provided on May 10, 2022. Notice of the hearing was also made known on the Guam Legislature's website. This morning, the committee will hear testimony on the Cannabis Control Board proposed rules and regulations. Before we begin, I would like to go over some general rules of conduct for today's hearing. Those who have come to testify will begin by allowing 5 minutes per testimony. That's just because initially we did have a lot of feedback that a lot of people would be providing testimony. We want to give everyone a chance to testify and also allow members of our panel to ask questions of each panel. So as each panel comes up, we'll allow each person 5 minutes to testify. If you have extra testimony, you can submit it in writing. Also, if we get through all the testimony soon enough and there's still enough time left, if anyone wants to finish their testimony and provide more testimony, I'll allow you to come back up and continue to provide testimony. I just want to allow everyone the chance to provide testimony today. So if you're presenting written testimony orally, please ensure that it fits the 5-minute time limit, and please provide us with a copy of your written testimony so we can include your full testimony in the public record of this hearing. After all members of the panel have presented their testimony, then I'll ask my colleagues to ask one question per colleague per panel. And now I would like to welcome my colleagues who are joining us this morning: Vice Speaker Tina Muñoz-Barnes, Senator Chris Dueñas, Senator and Majority Leader Talina Nelson, Senator Tony Atta. All right, we will now proceed with the discussions on the Cannabis Control Board's proposed rules and regulations. And we'll begin by hearing testimony from those who have joined us this morning. And I'll call on participants based on how their names appear on the sign-in sheet. Up first, we have Mr. Ernest Wistic.
Good morning, Senator Ridgell, Senator Tina Barnes, Chris Dueñas, Talina Nelson, and Senator Atta. Good morning. The reason why I'm here today, because I had a phone call yesterday, and they're saying that the board wanted this to be organically grown. And I don't think that's necessary. I can see the spraying of pesticide is a no-no, because people will smoke it and then they'll get into their lungs, to their blood system. But as far as fertilizer, I've been farming for about 50 years, and I see that commercial fertilizer is very helpful to the farmers. And I don't see why that they cannot use commercial fertilizer on the cannabis. It's just an added cost if you do organically grown, because you have to be certified by the federal. You cannot just say, it's organically grown. It has to be certified. That's another hurdle for the growers. So as long as they're using the legal triple 20 water soluble, triple 20 fertilizer, it's all right. I've been doing that on my corn. I've been putting commercial fertilizer, and there's nothing wrong. So why does the board want it to regulate how to grow the crop? A farmer should know it. So that's about my testimony. Is commercial fertilizer is a yes. Pesticide spraying is a no. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wistic. And just for everyone's information, if you want to keep track of your time, we do have a timer there that's visible so you can kind of see where your time is at. Next on the list is Mr. Mike Mateo.
Hello. Good morning, Senators, distinguished guests, and the people of Guam. My name is Mike Mateo. I come to you before you in opposition of the CCB proposed rules and regulations. I'm an entrepreneur who wishes to participate in this industry. However, with these proposed rules and regulations, it makes it nearly impossible for me as an entrepreneur to enter the market and sustain reasonable profits if this proposal lapses into law. There are many issues in this document, but I will only dwell into one major deal breaker for me, and that's vertical integration. The idea of banning vertical integration will destroy many businesses in this industry, which will ultimately result in lower tax revenue for the government and an increase in business within the black market and its unregulated products. Nationwide, there are many states that have mandated vertical integration because they know the benefits of this concept. Most may not know the tax implications of entering a business within this industry. The fact of it all is that every business in this industry will fall victim to a Section 208E of the Federal Income Tax Code. For those who don't know about this specific tax code, I will elaborate. Section 208E of the Internal Revenue Code forbids businesses from deducting otherwise ordinary business expenses from gross income associated with trafficking of a Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 substance, meaning that before I can even take away any of my overhead costs, I must get taxed first, okay? In layman's terms, that means I cannot deduct my rent, my payroll, I cannot depreciate my assets, amongst other things that would make me profitable. If I'm not making a profit, then why would I be in business? I would be at a net loss every single year competing with the black market and its price points. Eventually, I will shut down my business because I'm unable to compete with their price points while simultaneously paying all the taxes imposed in this industry. Not just my business will close, most businesses will close, and that'll be a huge hit to the tax collected by the government and the beneficiaries of those collections, and most especially to the people of this island who demand a safe and regulated industry. Allowing the option to vertically integrate will allow me to share my overhead expenses with another license so I can realize some profits, lower my price points, and compete with this black market. According to Mike King of Vance, a cannabis hiring platform, he shares some other pros of vertically integrating in this article dated April 8, 2021. Pros of vertical integration. Controlling the production processes allows companies to make their products at a lower cost. Control the production line ensures better accuracy and quality control, which will ultimately end up in the consumer's hands. Vertical integration also allows for faster changes to product offerings, meaning that we're able to respond to the market's needs and demands whenever they see fit. Now let's dwell into price points for a minute. I pose this question to the floor. Would you buy an unlocked iPhone 12 on Facebook for $600, or would you rather go to Docomo or IT&E and pay $1,000 for that same iPhone? And I understand that the answers will vary differently based on everyone's financial responsibilities and their personal, just basically personal finances. However, one industry is taxed and the other is not. If the white market cannot compete with the price points of the black market will always thrive, and the government will never receive its tax dollars from this booming industry. I bet you're wondering, how can a cannabis business compete with its black market competitors? And the answer is quite simple. Allow the option to vertically integrate. I pose another question to the floor. If Docomo and IT&E had an iPhone 12 for $600 and as the same price point as the item listed on Facebook, I bet most people in this room would probably go to IT&E or Docomo because it's a brand they can trust. This same question can translate into any other industry, most especially the cannabis industry. Now, I'm not going to come in here and only state problems. I'll offer a solution or a compromise where the government wins and the industry wins. I propose optional integration. If a business decides to integrate in order to compete, they should have that option. If this seems unreasonable to the floor or to the board because of the fear of monopolization, I'll propose a second option. Allow optional integration and mimic Washington's model and allow for cultivation and manufacturing only. This way we can help rid the island of the black market, provide her with safe and regulated products. The government will get its tax dollars. The industry will thrive with happy and safe consumers, and the black market will soon be close to non-existent. It's a win-win for everyone, and in my personal opinion, it's a no-brainer. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony this morning. Next on the list is Leilani Navarro. I don't see her here, so we'll move on. Just for note, Vanessa Williams from the Cannabis Control Board is also here to answer any questions. Mrs. Williams, do you have any testimony to provide this morning, or are you just here to sort of be available on behalf of the Control Board? Can you turn the mic on?
Good morning. Thank you, Senators. I came with the intention of answering any questions, but I will just say that I am appearing. I am the chair of the Cannabis Control Board. Our submission to the legislature, to the speaker, contains all of the justification or the testimony, if you will, for why we proposed the rules as such. If you review the transmittal, you'll see that we did have we noticed and had 12 hours of public hearing time, and I do recognize some faces and some voices, and so the product or the result that you see before you is a result of those hearings, and then of course going through the process. We did get review from the AG, the Attorney General's office. We did get review from the Governor's office as to policy going through the rulemaking, and so I will tell you, there were changes and amendments at every step of the way based on public testimony. So what you have before you is our best efforts, but I appreciate the comments that continue, and I'm happy to take any questions from the senators. I'm taking note and listening of the continued testimony, and we will be meeting next week as well, the board. We've noticed a meeting today so that if there are any substantive questions that the senators have, that we can deliberate, in accordance with the open government law and respond within the 10-day period to accept further testimony. Thank you, senators.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Next on the sign-in sheet is Mr. Nathan Bell.
Hi. Thanks for having me. I don't really have any interest in selling cannabis. But what I am interested is the seeds, the genetics, those sorts of things. So naturally, I've been keeping my eye on the proposed rules and regulations, pretty much just the seed selection since they, we started getting access to them. That section is 3 sentences long. It originally stated that seeds must be sourced locally and tissue culture. Now it states that they may be sourced locally. There was the other part of that that said that importation was prohibited, or that might not be the exact language, but now it says that it's regulated. So I do support that. I think that it's important for us to have access to those sorts of things, but as someone who locally is working on that, just as a hobby, it seems like maybe we should have put a little bit more thought into that. It's pretty ambiguous right now as to how, from whom those seeds will be sourced. If the local sources are, or to what standards, is a person able to just get seeds from anyone off island? And if so, would a local source be held to that same virtually non-existent standard? Those are the questions. That's really the only question I have is, or concern that I have is that it doesn't seem like there was much consideration made to that. I don't know if that's because it's not typically something that people care about. It's a huge industry, multi-billion-dollar industry. The cannabis genetics are, but cannabis is a $1 billion industry. So it's a lot smaller. I don't know if the cultivation licenses the way they're set up would benefit anyone who's looking to do that. Obviously, if you're growing a bunch of plants, then you're probably going to sell the plant. But it's something that I think should be considered. There's nothing that I saw that mentions a nursery. I searched. There was something that looks like it's going to be a Department of Agriculture nursery that will have cannabis plants, and so that's pretty cool, I guess. But yeah, I wish maybe some more thought would be put into that, or some clarification would happen with that, because I'm not the only person. I mean, granted, the vast majority of people are going to be after cultivating flower or extracts or edibles and so forth, but there are people who are interested in that, and I feel like it hasn't been addressed maybe as much as it could be. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Bell, for your testimony. If I may just add something to the record that goes along the lines of some of the issues you brought up with regards to the seeds. The seeds are a difficult issue I know that the board had to deal with, and the reason for that I know is because you mentioned about how to source the seeds, whether you can source them off island or not. That's the big question right now, because technically, according to federal law, you can't import any cannabis products from off island, because federal law prohibits any transport of any cannabis products in between state lines or from the states to territories, etc. So because of that, the idea was to allow it so that whatever's already here is sort of here already, and you can cultivate whatever seeds are here, whatever genetics are here, you can create your own genetics. So that is an issue, and that largely stems from the federal law. However, I did recently read something that I don't think has been fully fleshed out yet, but there is a major genetics company, I believe from the mainland, I don't remember exactly where they're from, who one of their attorneys posed the question, I believe it was to the DEA, if I'm not mistaken. They posed the question of whether or not seeds can be imported or cross state lines because of the way that, this is how complicated it gets, just wait till I get there. Because of the Farm Act, the Farm Bill that legalized hemp, technically legalized any, and so for the listening audience, I know you guys who are sitting here in front of us know all of this, but for the listening audience, hemp is classified as any cannabis plant that has less than 0.03% THC, right? So any cannabis plant or product that has less than 0.03% THC is technically hemp. We know that hemp is the same plant. It's just a cannabis plant. It's just a cannabis plant with less THC than other cannabis plants. So the legal definition is just based off of THC. So since seeds contain no THC, this attorney posed the question that should not seeds be allowed under the Hemp Act to be transported across state lines and to be imported, etc. The response from, and I need to double check which agency it was, so I'm not 100% sure which federal agency it was, but I'm thinking it was the US DEA, but I'll have to double check. This federal agency responded with their attorneys saying, you know what, you're right. Technically, seeds don't have THC in them, so they should be able to be transported across state lines. Now, that attorney and that seed company has put that information out there, and it's in the press. There's some stories that were written about it, but I don't know if that would really hold weight in court. I'm not sure. Perhaps that's something that Mrs. Williams could address, but I'm not sure if she's even had an opportunity to look into that. So again, it's something that they're talking about. It's an issue that an attorney raised and that this one federal agency agreed with, but an agreement from a federal agency is different than a court case, for example. So until it's been brought up in court and fleshed out in court, I don't think you could say that you could import seeds. However, if it was the USDA, the USDA is the one who would regulate importation. So if the regulators are saying it's fine, then that's one potential possibility. But I don't think they've put out anything definitive saying, yes, go ahead and import seeds. It's just something that was a question that was raised, and this federal agency, their response was, your legal argument is sound, essentially. But again, it hasn't been vetted in court. So that's just to kind of frame how complicated the issue of seeds is, and it's something that's definitely being worked out even at the federal level. Thank you, Mr. Bell, for your testimony. I do definitely agree that this is something that we all need to figure out and find some better regulations for how seeds and tissue culture and all these things are to be treated, because that's absolutely a very important part of the industry. So I agree with you on that, Mr. Bell. Thank you for your testimony. If I may now move on to the next person who signed up, we have Mr. Jason Paulino. Excuse me, is it Paulino? Okay. Oh, sorry, yes.
Yes.
Hi.
Good morning. My only thing that I want to bring to the table today is more on the medical side. Myself, I have two autistic children, adults. One has seizures, the other one tends to have violent outbreaks and whatnot, you know. According to what I've been reading through our rules and regulations, we cannot give, it's illegal to give people with mental disabilities or such forth, with possibly a 3-year jail time and stuff like that. Currently, the only person I know on island that does give a medical card or whatnot is like Dr. Akuma. I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding Dr. Akuma. I've gone to my own primary, I've gone to my children's doctor, and I've been just getting stonewalled everywhere, you know. A lot of the doctors seem to be hesitant. You know, that's something we can look into, you know. There are many medical things that we have seen that cannabis helps with, seizure-wise, you know. It does work, you know. I've seen it firsthand. There's a lot of people are worried about, you know, that they have children or with disabilities that could benefit from this, but they're scared to proceed with, or they're doing it behind closed doors or whatnot, you know, with the stigma that if I do this, even if it's legal, cannabis is legal to the recreational or the medical user, but to help their children, they're scared to do it. They're scared to push forward or whatnot, and it'd be nice to see if we can look into that and maybe give some of our physicians on island a more open approach, you know, like, you know, everything's gonna be okay, you know, like personally, I'm not gonna say which doctors I've seen, but they've all expressed to me that we're just waiting for, you know, industry to move forward, more clarity on rules and regulations when it comes to that part. And that's, you know, I myself, you know, I'm a medical cannabis patient, you know, I have PTSD, I have, you know, back problems and stuff like that. And it helps me, you know, it helps me a lot. And I've seen it help so many other people in you know, on our island. My main thing is the people with disability, we need to find some way to help them out too, you know. We need to open a door, even through like mental health. Nobody there, when you talk to anybody at mental health, they're like, just, I don't know, you know. It's kind of up to you, you know. But when we read the black and white says, no, we can't, you know, we can't do that. And, you know, that leaves us in a little limbo of what to do, you know. Right now, I have a child that's on clonidine. I have another child. The other child is on, you know, a heavier, like Prozac and stuff like that. I, myself, seen that it doesn't really work, you know. I personally like to try to open them up to a more natural remedy. And I have many other people on, you know, on island that I've talked to about this, and, you know, they want to, you know. And it's just, if there's, you know, we can look into that and see if that's something we can open a door for our physicians, you know, that they start feeling that it's okay to start giving, you know, medical referrals or approval to use cannabis, you know. That's just about all I have to bring to the table, sir.
Thank you. Next, we have a B. St. Nicholas.
Off a day? Oh man, I've been waiting for this day. It's been what, 4 years now? I mean, my thing is, I was hoping we had more meetings, you know. I mean, I've been waiting, and I grow just to help people out with medical issues. Like, I have high blood pressure, and I don't want to take pills from the doctor. So I did a study on myself, and I did cannabis for 3 months. I went to the PI, did my executive checkup. My doctor locally here told me to take all these pills. I did research on the pills. It causes liver cirrhosis. My mom has passed away through liver cirrhosis. So seeing my mom go through all that, and I'm looking at myself and the people I'm helping on the island, I was just hoping that there's something that we should have done more, like more meetings, you know. So there's a lot of concerns out there that I hear about, but a lot of them they're not here. And I was hoping to see them here. So my concern is just as these guys are, you know. I hope that there's something we can do to come up with a better solution on the medical side. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And could you give your name for the record again?
Oh, Benny Saniklas,
Okay, thank you.
671 Canna.
Thank you. Okay, that is everyone on this panel, and at this time I'll allow my colleagues the opportunity to ask one question each of this panel so we can get to the next panel. And I'll begin at my right, Senator Tony Atta. Do you have any questions for the panel?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Probably just for Mr. Siniclas, you were saying that you wish they had more hearings for the proposed rules and regulations?
Yeah, it would have been nice. Yeah.
So you didn't know about any of the meetings, or you were just at a couple? Where are you at here? You didn't attend any of the meetings?
Well, there's been a lot of backyard meetings that they had like prior to this day that people would put together and talk about, but it would be more if we met with the board more, or the board would have went around and said, hey, let's have a public hearing and let's hear the concerns of the people, right? That would have been nice, I think.
Okay, thank you. Attorney Williams, did they have issue notices and how many hearings were made to the public?
Yeah. So we've, since we started meeting in, I believe it was 2019, we're pushing about 40 public meetings now. They're all noticed and published and now posted online in accordance with the open government law requirements. We virtually came to a standstill, like most of the world, in March of 2020 when we had anticipated having our initial public hearings, and so we ended up having them in November of 2020, I believe. It's in our submission or transmittal to the speaker, along with the tear sheets and the notice, and they were over 3 days. It was a Thursday evening for 2 hours, 5:30 to 7:30, Friday, and all day Saturday. We had all day Saturday, 9 to 5. And what we did, given I think the restrictions at the time, is that we had the physical meeting using a conference space up at Loop, and then we also, but I think only 1 or 2 people physically showed up. Everyone showed up on Zoom. We had it on Zoom. So that's when we had the public hearings. We continued to, I'll say at every meeting we've had, I put on the agenda public forum or public comment, and we always give an opportunity and invite the public to comment. To this day, we do that in each meeting, and we accepted written testimony after the public hearing. I forget the exact amount of days, but we did receive a lot of written testimony as well, which is all included, should be included in the packet.
Oh, okay. So I just wanted to make sure, because when he said that, there wasn't enough public hearings, I wanted to ensure that there was. So prior to the submission of the rules and regulations, when was your last public meeting prior to submission?
Prior to the submission, so the submission was February 28th. I want to say our last meeting might have been that day or the day before when the board authorized and instructed me to submit it. I could be wrong, I'd have to check the minutes, but we have aimed to have meetings almost monthly. You know, there's been periods, I think primarily when COVID started, where we had a gap of a couple months.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Senator Addis. Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for giving your testimony today. I do have a couple questions. For Attorney Williams, is the current Guam law contradicting any federal law that is now in place?
Well, it's a kind of a difficult question, and I guess I'll say I'm here in capacity as the chair of the Cannabis Control Board. I'm not their lawyer. You know, I happen to be a lawyer as well. But I will say we know that it's not been decriminalized. You know, it's still a controlled substance federally. And so I'd say yes, you know, even just legalizing could be deemed inconsistent with federal law.
Okay. And the rules and regulations that we're having the hearing on today, does that mitigate any of the contradiction or the conflict within the federal law?
I think so I don't think there's anything we can do, you know, in terms of preemption. There's nothing in the rules we could do to say this federal law won't be effective. You know, that isn't within our power. But we did try to navigate and address that space. So in one way, the seeds issue, right? It's as Senator Ridgell said, you know, maybe there's an opinion now that you can source seeds off island, and one of the interesting things is, you know, with the law, opinions will differ, and even when you go to court, you can have different opinions in different jurisdictions. So it'll be interesting to see what happened. One of the ways that we dealt with that to try to mitigate these effects and these inconsistencies is to write it in such a way that if it becomes descheduled and decriminalized at the federal level, that nothing in our rules would otherwise restrict that. So for the seed issue, we didn't want to restrict it or say, okay, you can't bring it off island, because what if, you know, the DOJ issues guidance otherwise, or Congress takes action to decriminalize, you know, so we tried to be mindful of that.
So the rules allow for the seeds to be imported for growth?
I believe the word is may, so it doesn't restrict it, but I don't have it right in front of me.
Okay, thank you. And then, Mr. St. Nicholas, you mentioned that more should be done in reference to the medical side and the rules and regulations. Can you specify what exactly do you mean by that?
I mean, you know, like I was talking to Jason, and I guess there's a fine if you administer cannabis to people that are having seizures, you know. Is Guam going to have some type of medical doctor that can be allowed to prescribe that to patients that has ADHD, PTSD, you know, seizures?
Attorney Williams, did the board consider this situation take into consideration the medical procedures or the medical needs or the medical concerns that the community had, as Mr. St. Nicholas
I'm sorry, I
stated?
didn't catch all of his response, but
I'm sorry, if I could just interject.
You just said one question, right?
Not just that. Actually, just to clarify, and if I could keep the conversation back on track. There are two separate boards. The Medical Cannabis Board is the one that oversees all the medicinal rules. So the Cannabis Control Board only dealt with adult use rules and regulations. And I know there's some confusion because sometimes there appears to be some overlap, but the Medical Board was established first, and then the Cannabis Control Board was established just to develop rules and regulations for adult use, or as some people like to call it, recreational use, but I call it adult use because, anyways, that's a whole nother because it's medicine for everyone. Whether or not they're using it recreationally, it's medicinal.
Okay.
So
That's good. So there are two separate boards?
Yes, there are two separate boards, and so if we could keep the conversation strictly to the adult use rules and regs, and that's what is before us today, are the adult use, not the medicinal rules and regulations. You do have valid concerns, Mr. St. Nicholas. Those concerns should definitely be brought up with the medicinal control board. Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You know, interestingly, I met up with someone last night, and he was mentioning about a 60% tax in the rules and regulations? Is there a 60% tax in these rules?
No, the rules
Okay.
don't address taxes. I believe it's in the Cannabis Industry Act, and I don't think we have, well, I'm certain we don't really have the authority to alter what's in that law.
Yes, yeah, okay, very good. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Nelson. Senator Duenas.
Jesus Masi, Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank the board, or excuse me, the panel members for being here today. You know, having been born in the 60s, probably contrary to popular belief, I'm not a subject matter expert. So I'm here to listen, but I did have one question. Maybe I'll start with Mr. Bell, and if any other panel members want to join in. Since the legalization of basically homegrown, if you will, what is your and other members of the panel's experience been with that law having been passed and kind of like, I don't know, I guess I would call it self-regulation at this point. I just wanted to get an idea of what you feel is within the community, the current mood, temperature, and how that's working.
Can you hear me okay? It was, and I don't mean this, as hyperbole. It was life-changing for a lot of people to be able to do that. So we owe huge thanks to Senator Ridgell and the other lawmakers who voted in favor of that. It's been a blast. This whole, just everything, whether there's industry or not. I mean, obviously, the industry is, looks better, it's more attractive. But, it's been great. I think that the community itself has been good. I think that there's a lot of people helping other people, and just I don't have a bad thing to say about it. It's been wonderful for me, and I've met some incredible people that I wouldn't have otherwise met. I've been able to do something that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to do, that I've wanted to do for a long time. And so that's my personal experience.
If I may add something to that. Prior to legalization, right, everyone was in the dark. A lot of people didn't know a lot of people, right? And as legalization came to fruition, more people started entering the light, networking with people to find out how we as a community can grow and make this better, to make it safe, to make it more acceptable to the public. And I think that with the legalization and the lawmakers who helped push for that, I want to say thank you. Not only did you take out a lot of fear from a lot of people, but you also brought a lot of people together. And if there's one thing I can say is that together we're stronger, and together we'll rise. Thank you.
All right, for me, I'd like to say it's great. Thank you, guys. I found a lot of passion on it. It's good therapy to grow. Stress reliever, I say. Thank you.
In light of what everybody said, pretty much I'm in agreement. Myself, I'm a former corrections officer of 18 years. I've seen, since everything is coming to the light, I've seen former law enforcement veterans, see them cultivate, seen them come out of their shell, guy that suffered PTSD, bang, everybody's scared, He's happy, he's cool. I've seen former inmates or detainees, meth users. I've seen them and come across them in the streets. They don't know what I do. Well, obviously, maybe now they do. I see them. They're cultivating. They're off that. They're family oriented. I've seen a lot of positive things coming out of this, and honestly, I can't be thankful enough to all the effort that you guys have put in to getting this movement moving forward. Well, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the question, Senator Duenas, but just for the record, if we can please keep questions going forward, and the comments, of course, directed specifically on the rules and regulations, but I did like that question.
And just a clarification, Mr. Chair, I don't want to get into a debate, but I think it is important, though, because we have to understand the steps. The legalization on the issue of homegrown basically laid a bed for, and we have to decide now with rules and regs what the other concerns are within commercial industries, right? So to me, it's an evolution. So just thank you for that opportunity.
Fair enough. So that will conclude, oh, sorry, Mr. Wistic, did you have something to add? Please.
I just want to, I just wanted to say that I don't even grow this cannabis. In the beginning, I thought I was going to be growing it to subsidize my farming, but it takes a lot. It takes a lot to do it, and I think I'm best just to grow my crops, and the only thing is that to make it organically grown, it's impossible. It's just an added cost. Like I said, it have to be federal approved to make it organic. So it's just another hurdle. But to spray with pesticide is a no-no. But to use synthetic fertilizer, it's okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wistic. Forgive me, I forgot to also recognize two other colleagues here. I apologize, please, I apologize. Senator Sabina Perez as well as Senator Telo Taitagui. Senator Perez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question regarding the panel member that was talking about vertical integration. And I know this is a hotly contested thing during the rules and regs and the formulation of the rules and regs. Was that brought to the board as far as your proposals regarding the options and following, I think you said was Washington's model?
Yes, Washington's model. Yes, Washington's model. Washington's model basically states that if you cultivate, you're allowed to manufacture, but you cannot own a dispensary. You cannot own a retail store. And I guess they did that in fear of monopolization, but if you see in California's markets, Colorado's markets, Massachusetts markets, where all these states have mandated vertical integration, meaning you have to own each one of the supply chain. They found that monopolization didn't quite happen. It was more based on the funding to get it started, or capital investments, and not necessarily monopolization. Because if it was for monopolization, there would only be one, right? Think of it more as an oligopoly, similar to that of the gas stations here on Guam, Mobile, 76. That's a basic oligopoly, but it's not a monopoly, right? So going back to your first question, was it proposed? And I believe it was. But I believe there was a lot of scrutiny behind vertical integration because of the fear of monopolization. And I'm here to testify that I don't believe that it will be monopolized. Because in order for you to truly be a monopoly, you need to be the only one. And I don't think that's going to be the case as far as investments go, right? It does take a lot to get something like this started, and which is why I propose optional. If they want to, they should. If you want to cap the amount of licenses so you can prevent a monopoly, I'm okay with that too, right? But in my honest opinion, I don't believe it'll be a monopoly.
Okay, and maybe Attorney Williams, if maybe you want to chime into that. What was
Sure. Yeah,
the discussion on
definitely
that.
concerned. Vertical integration was probably amongst the top 3 issues. I think what Mr. Wistic addressed as well at the public hearing. And I think, and I'm just going to reflect on what the conversations were with the board, at our meetings, is that more so than monopolization, I think Mr. Mateo addressed it as the capitalization issue in terms of if we require or permit vertical integration, is that going to prevent these small shops and who are just intend to do one thing, like just cultivate or just manufacture, make value-added products, prevent them from joining the market? And there was a lot of discussion back and forth, even against vertical integration for those very concerns. So what the board did, we won't know until it happens when the industry starts. So what we did is we committed to revisit the issue. We can, in terms of permitting vertical integration, once the industry starts, and see if that's something we should permit through rules.
What about the concern about black market? So if it seems what you're saying, Mr. Mateo, is that there is an opportunity for black markets to probably predominate if vertical integration doesn't happen. So what is have you, I guess perhaps, this is a question for Attorney Williams, was there any research done regarding, the issue of black market and non-vertical integration?
Yes, I think so. There was definitely discussion on it. We have representatives on the board from each of the regulatory agencies, and they would work and talk with other states and jurisdictions and looking what they did. And I think I can just say, at the board level, when we were discussing it, is that there would be concerns about the black market the other way too. If they can't compete with a bigger company that can provide product because they're vertically integrated at this lower price, then why bother? And the black market will continue. So that's ultimately, where the discussion, how we came to the decision to not permit vertical integration at this time and revisit, when the industry actually starts taking off and all these businesses can set up.
If I may add something, currently right now the black market is vertically integrating, right? If you cultivate, you can manufacture, and you can retail it, right? Unregulated, right? And the truth of the matter is the elephant's in the building, right? We know about it. It's not uncommon. We've seen it before, and we've seen it for years, right? To come out into the light, to put our lives on the line, to actually cultivate and retail and manufacture. And in the open market, right, the idea of banning vertical integration hinders what's already been done in the black market. So if we're going to compete with price points, right, let's just take, for example, the price of a pound in California is $2,000. If someone was to ship that over here, cost landed $2,500 at the absolute most. That's super exaggerated, right? Because we all know shipping costs is a lot, $500. If you gram it out, $2,000 worth of product, you can make easily street value $8,000, right? And that's already vertically integrated from them. All they had to do was get the product from there to here, right? And if we can't compete with those price points, what's the point of opening up the business, right? Yeah, I understand the support local, right? And I know a lot of people in this building will support local. But the fact of the matter is, if you're buying an iPhone for $600 versus an iPhone for $1,000, especially during times of inflation, I bet most people in this room would probably go for $600. Rarely would they go with the brand that they trust, right? Even though it is a hefty price point. But if we can match the price points for the black and white market, I bet you more people would stick with the white market. And it's not to say that the black market is going to be completely gone, because it's never going to be completely gone. But the idea of vertical integration is to restrict it, to not necessarily take it out because it's always going to be there, but to give the companies that are willing to step into a light a fighting chance to help defeat the black market. And that's what I'm trying to get to.
Thank you for the responses. Another question regarding the seed to sale. I know there was, how far along do you know, this is a question for Attorney Williams, how far along is the seed to sell program, I guess?
Sorry, Senator, I didn't quite make it. Are you asking how far along in implementation of the program we are?
Yes.
I think I understand public health is here, and they're going to be on the next panel. They procured the system, and they're working with the vendor metric in the implementation. I think they can better respond to exactly where they are, because I know that things are moving rapidly right now.
Another question regarding the banking. I know this has been a big issue because it's a Scheduled I substance, and banks are not allowed to, I guess, transact monetarily. How does that impact, I guess, the implementation of the rules or the industry itself?
I'm sorry, Senator, I'm hard of hearing. Can you repeat the question?
I'm sorry, it's my mask too. So the other issue is the cannabis being a Schedule I substance, and the fact that banks are not allowed to transact monetarily any kind of monies that come from the sale of cannabis, and how does that play into the implementation or the of the industry? I guess the startup of the industry.
Sorry. I'm sorry, Senator. My hearing aids are turned up, but I still can't make it
If
out.
I could, I can clarify the question. I believe the question that the senator is asking is, how does the difficulty with banks accepting cannabis cash, how would that affect the implementation of the rules and regulations, I guess?
Yes, thank you, Senator. Very important question. Right now, for the past, I'd say, year at least, or year and a half, we've been communicating with the Banking and Insurance Board that's also housed at Department of Revenue and Tax to see what issues they thought or concerns they had. So the problem is, or the issue is that it is the bank's business decision or prerogative and whether they're going to accept cannabis funds from cannabis-related transactions. And so there are two issues that we're concerned with, is whether the government will have somewhere to deposit license and application fees for cannabis businesses, and then following that, taxes. And then we're also concerned about our cannabis businesses, licensees being able to operate safely, or, if they're going to have to resort to cash. So we've talked with the Department of Administration, talked with the Banking and Insurance Board, and talked with the banking community. And as it stands right now, at least in the last week or two, we don't have a local bank that will accept these funds. So that's going to be an issue, is, this is a cash-related business, and I think primarily for the government on our side is how do we accept fees and then eventually taxes, application fees and taxes. So that's definitely an issue. In terms of the rules and regulations that we promulgated, there was nothing we can do to require them to accept this money, and nothing we can really do we have asked what we can do. We've always asked what we can do to allow them or make them comfortable with their business decision to bank cannabis businesses and to accept these funds. And my understanding is the consensus is, well, if we feel like the market is sufficiently regulated and they want to see what type of access they have to licensee information so they can verify, because they will be risky customers. And so public health, as the procurer of the C2Cell system, the regulator that works with the metric, they have coordinated and had presentations with the banks to see how this is going to operate. and that's where we are right now. But this is ongoing. We're continuing to address the issue. The Director of Department of Administration is well aware and is working diligently with the Department of Rev and Tax and the board. We're trying to keep this paramount and a priority issue for all the decision makers.
Thanks. And if I may just interject briefly. This is an issue that the Banking and Insurance Commission has been discussing, and I understand that there are some potential solutions out there. First of all, the issue is not so much, it's as Attorney Williams said, it's up to each bank to decide. But technically, banks and other financial institutions are capable of receiving cannabis cash, provided that they essentially fill out a lot of paperwork and take on some added risk. What the banks and financial institutions are afraid of is getting in trouble for accidentally receiving laundered money. So that is money that's not even from cannabis sales, but a cannabis business using that as a front to launder money. Banks are primarily afraid of laundered money. So in order to avoid that, there are extra precautions they can take, and there are in fact banks and some financial institutions in the States who do accept cannabis cash. However, they have to do a lot of extra work to do it. They have to sort of create their own internal guidelines and internal regulations, and they essentially have to fill out a lot of paperwork and just keep a really close eye on those accounts. It's allowed under FinCEN is what it's called. You can look it up for more information. But technically it's allowed under FinCEN regulations. They just have to fill out a lot of extra paperwork and a lot more reporting requirements, which is why some of the financial institutions who accept cannabis cash in the States, they in return jack up their fees. They charge high fees to cannabis businesses because they have to do a lot of extra work. And ultimately it is up to each bank, because they're a private entity, whether or not they want to take on that risk. Now there are some solutions out there that can help mitigate the risk. Particularly there's some cashless solutions. I've heard about one called CanPay. I've read about it. There's some other solutions out there where they essentially use some form of a cashless system, so they're card-based, and they work together with the banking institutions and the financial institutions to ensure that the money that they are receiving is strictly from the cannabis sales and not from any other illegal markets. It's not laundered money. So they have ways of improving the regulations and making the regulations, allowing the banks to more easily comply with federal regulations. So I know that's something that's been discussed at the Banking and Insurance Commission level, and hopefully they'll find some resolution to it in the future. But that is definitely something that is of concern, but I know people are actively working on finding solutions to that concern. Senator Titagui?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon. And I could see the excitement in your voice, Mr. Siniclis, when you said finally, after 3 years, right?
Yes.
I was one of the sponsors of the bill, and it passed 8-7, so it was pretty tight. But I'm glad to see that we're here today discussing it. It is 121 pages for the listening audience of these rules and regulations that were provided to us. I was kind of hoping we'd have more than one public hearing and at least allow more questioning, because it is, like I said, 121 pages, and I'm pretty sure not everyone here, other than Senator Ridgell, reading the whole entire rules and regs. But I did glance through it, and I'd like to study it more, to get that opportunity. I mean, I supported this from day one, and for the mere fact of Mr. Paulino, the comments that you were making. It touches deeply when it comes to medical, and I think mostly because of that, my support. And my sister was an advocate for it and pushed for it, and she died the day it was signed into law. But at least she was alive to hear that it finally did pass, the legislature. And so I really appreciate all the hard work. Attorney Williams, you've been such a great advocate and doing your due diligence. I greatly appreciate it. I believe you're a great attorney, and they picked the right person for this. You mentioned there were 40 public hearings. Is that correct? Even my hearing is really bad. I mean, it's real bad too. So
No, there's been close to 40 public meetings. There were
Meetings,
3
okay.
days of public hearings.
Okay, so only 3 days of public hearings, but then the board was meeting almost 40 different times?
Yeah, we've met,
Okay.
I think next week will be like our 38th meeting. If, yeah,
Okay.
so we're pushing 40.
Okay, and before I forget, I just wanted to get a copy of your testimony. I didn't even get your I came in late, I'm so sorry. Your name, please? Mike Mateo. Okay, Mike.
Mike Mateo.
Last name? Mateo, okay, see, it's the echo in here. Mateo, I really would love a copy of your testimony. I know you were reading it on your phone. If you could just email it, to all senators. It's a wealth of information on that. Now, getting back to, and I'm hoping we can address your situation, Mr. Paulino, most especially. Mr. Nicholas, thank you for your insight and just your enthusiasm on this. Let's keep it going, right? And I'm sure that this 120-page rules of regulations went through scrutiny, but there are additional stuff that's in here that wasn't really addressed by the rules and regs. And I guess, thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing just a little bit more leeway, especially with Attorney Williams here in front of us on the questions. Because the rules define that cannabis establishments to include a cannabis testing facility, a cultivation facility, a cannabis product manufacturing facility, or a cannabis retail store. This may multiple license be provided for a single site, such as any combination of the cultivation facility, product manufacturing facility, or the retail or conditional use permit within an A zone. It mentions in the rules and regulations on the A zone. Can you kind of elaborate on that? Or may the combination of the activities permitted by the rules and regs within a single premise be considered an accessory use by zoning law on properties conducted in such operations?
Yeah, I think, and I'm not sure which section in the rules is, I could pull it up if you give me the section, but where the 4 different types of facilities could be located was definitely a big topic of discussion when we're developing the rules and at the public hearings and receiving testimony afterwards. And so the intention was that, I don't remember all of the zones, but we did speak with land management and look into what various types of activities are typically permitted in each zone, and that's how the zoning restrictions were developed or finalized on.
I see. And I know some of the questions I have, if you're not able to answer, because I know you'd have to go back to revert into the rules and probably remember all those 40 meetings that you had. So I appreciate, if you can't respond, then to please provide me that answer when you have a chance to look into it.
Yes, I will. Thank
I
you.
noticed that the rules and regulations outline fees for 4 sizes of cultivation facilities ranging from 500 to 10,000. Aside from fees for the facilities, there's an additional operational fee ranging between 600 to 15,000. Are operational fees cost above other fees for cultivation facilities?
I'm sorry, Senator, I'm not sure I understand the question, or maybe I missed pieces of it.
Okay, well, I know that, the rules and regs, it outlines the fees, right? For 4 sizes of cultivation facilities.
Correct.
Right, and it's ranging from 500 to 10,000. Aside from the fees for the facilities, there are additional operational fee ranging between 600 to 15,000. So my question is, are operational fee costs above the other fees for cultivation facilities?
If I'm understanding the question correctly, and I will go back to it and submit, and speak with the board and submit additional testimony, but those are the licensing fees for the 4 different types of sizes of cultivation facility, and operational costs or permit fees would be in addition to the licensing fees, correct?
Okay. Well, the Cannabis Board decided to slightly reduce the startup licensing fee for cannabis manufacturing facilities, right? From $15,000 to $12,000, is that correct?
I don't remember the exact numbers, but yeah, we did, I think there were several discussions on the fees. One is trying to keep them, of course, we have to follow what the law prohibits, like the max for the licensing fee, and then what are the, and then we, there were varying discussions on whether they should be higher or lower. Some people wanted higher and some people wanted lower.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to ask, but they kept the fees for cannabis retail stores the same at 15,000, and they didn't adjust that fee, but yet they adjusted the cannabis manufacturing facilities, down a few thousand. So I'm just curious as to why they didn't do that for the retail stores.
If I recall correctly, and I can go back because we had, I want to say it was close to 100 testimonies submitted between orally and written, and they were all transcribed, and we categorized them by issue, like vertical integration and fees. And if my recollection was that there actually wasn't any issue with the proposed retail fees. So what we did is we went back and looked at the proposed rules based on the comments received from the public hearing, and deliberated accordingly.
Okay, I'd like to actually, Mr. Chair, look into that too as well. I mean, if we were adjusting the manufacturer fee, there's no reason why we can't do that same for the retail stores as well. Just one more question, because I know that I'm glad to hear we have public health this year. Is Reventax going to be here too as well, Mr. Chair? Are they been invited? Reventax?
No, just the Cannabis Control
Okay.
Board, of which Reventax is a member of the board.
Okay, so hopefully we can get some questions with that. With Vanessa, who will provide the enforcement on on-site inspections for the facilities regulated by the board to meet the requirements of rules and regulations that the board created? Will the board require to hire specialized employees and agents? Will the board use current GovGuam entities to carry forward the rules and regulations?
Yeah, there's definitely going to be cross-regulation and enforcement, depending on what types of facilities. For manufacturers, for example, they are going to be the primary enforcers for, or public health is going to be the primary enforcement agency for manufacturers because they deal with other food safety issues. And then for licensing, cannabis, the Department of Revenue and Taxation is going to be the agency that accepts these license fees regardless of facility. So there's going to be, and Department of Agriculture is another one, especially with respect to cultivators.
Will the board be hiring their own individual inspectors?
I think that would be ideal if we had money allocated for it. So right now, under the law, the administrative support to the Cannabis Control Board comes from the Department of Revenue and Taxation. I'm not intimately familiar with their budget or budget request, but I know that in reviewing the enforcement of the rules, when we issue the proposed rules, they did estimate that they were going to need additional enforcement staff to carry out or assist the board in our enforcement duties.
Okay, that being said, Mr. Chair, I think it's something that should be considered, especially if the board putting this together to follow through with the rules and regs to ensure, our regulatory agencies do as much as they can, but they're, understaffed. And I'd really like to see this control be within the board that's created these rules and regulations, because when it comes to questions being asked, if you ever gone to certain agencies and asked the questions and they just look like they just started working there, and didn't know the answers? Well, I think this board has a duty, to continue, and I think it's just as important as any other regulatory agency to have. So I hope this is something maybe we can incorporate into the rules and regulations to provide that funding source needed for the board to continue on, and even to make adjustments later on in the future. This is not going to be perfect, right? But this is a start. It's a stepping stone, a foundation, and I think that you guys could use this type of assistance as well when it comes to this. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tidegui. And just to address that issue you brought up, Senator Tidegui, if I may, I actually do have a piece of legislation I'm working on that would allocate more resources to the Cannabis Control Board via some of the fees that are being assessed on cannabis businesses. That way they'll be able to hire people. Got it. All right. Thank you. Senator Perez.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So yeah, I just want to follow up with that line of questioning regarding the amount of funding that's needed for enforcement aspect. So DRT's budget hearing is tomorrow. So if you can provide any sort of a estimate that you think would be needed for this compliance and enforcement. It may not. If you have the number now, that'd be great. But
I will
provide it at a later time.
call their compliance branch immediately after this hearing.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Attorney Williams, and thank you to the panel.
All right, that concludes our discussion with this panel. I want to thank you all for coming out here and being brave enough to come out here. I appreciate it. We'll call up the next panel now. So this current panel, you are dismissed, except for Mrs. Williams. Can you stay around? Stick around? Or did you have to go somewhere?
No, I was just going to listen outside, but I can stay.
Oh, yes,
and
no,
then-
you can, I mean, please, if you need to take a break, go ahead, but I just meant like stay in the building.
Oh, okay, yeah. And
We'll bring up the next panel, and then if I may also, I may remind my colleagues, I kind of allowed extra questions there on the first set. We need to get back to keeping it to one question per panel because we have other panels we have to get through, and I want to allow everyone the opportunity to testify. I'm sure some people are, they have other stuff they need to get to. So we want to allow, there's people in the waiting room waiting to testify. So if we could keep it to one question per panel, and that way we can allow everyone the opportunity to provide testimony this morning. Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started with this panel. There are a few more members coming in. If there's a few more members that are coming in, we'll go ahead and begin with who's here now as more members of this next panel are brought up. Okay, so first on the list is Mr. Stephen Salas.
Can we yield to Sean Salas first?
Sure, no problem.
Thank you.
Mr. Sean Salas.
Havre Senators, my name is Sean Salas, and I'm from the village of Agate. I'm a bona fide farmer with the Guam Department of Agriculture, and from 2016 to 2018 was a sole proprietor and operator of Green Island Aquaponics, which is an all-natural approach to hydroponic cultivation, growing green leafy vegetables like lettuce, bok choy, herbs like basil and mint, and I'm also a potential stakeholder in the recreational cannabis industry. I testify today in opposition of the Guam Cannabis Control Board's proposed rules and regulations, specifically Article 4, Section 9405, Cannabis Cultivation Amendments. Section C of 9405 states the producer shall not use any fertilizer or composted plant and animal material that contains a synthetic substance not included on the national list of allowed and prohibited substance, 7 CFR Section 205.601, which is a list of synthetic substances allowed for use in organic crop production. So basically, the board is mandating all cannabis cultivators on Guam to practice organic growing methods and bans the use of most synthetic fertilizers that are safely used in other jurisdictions where commercial cannabis cultivation is legal. I'm not against organic farming methods, but in my experience, natural farming can be more costly and specifically for cannabis cultivators, more risky because naturally grown cannabis is more likely to contain pests, molds, and other microbials that can possibly fail the stringent laboratory testing mandated by the Guam Cannabis Act. The spirit of Public Law 35-5 was to allow law-abiding adults the choice to consume cannabis, generate tax revenues to provide preventative education and effective treatment for drug addiction, and stifle the cannabis black market on island to keep the substances out of the hands of the youth. Tying the hands of the cultivator by only allowing one growing method is not only unfair and unfounded, but it also jeopardizes the potential viability of all cannabis businesses. Investors may view these risks as too great and refrain from participating in the legal cannabis market altogether, further supporting the black market and rendering the point of regulating this industry useless. So why organic cultivation? I may be wrong, but it's my view that the Cannabis Control Board's motive for the organic-only policy is to limit the environmental impact that commercial cannabis cultivation could have. Yes, it's true. The wastewater generated from excessive use of synthetic plant nutrients can sometimes be environmentally harmful if allowed to leach directly into the soil during normal growing process in an outdoor cultivation facility. But there are options to mitigate this potential damage other than outright banning of legally safe synthetic nutrients. I propose to allow the use of synthetic plant nutrients only in indoor cultivation facilities where wastewater runoff can be collected and properly disposed of in accordance with Guam EPA standards. An appropriate place for these guidelines for synthetic plant nutrient wastewater runoff management should be included in Article 3, Section 9309, Wastewater Management and Disposal. There are currently no rules pertaining to this specific issue. While I commend the CCB for spending the last couple of years attempting to develop the rules and regulation for a completely new industry on Guam that tries to benefit both stakeholders and our island community, I personally believe that the flaws in these rules and regulations as it is currently written are a direct result of the law mandating these specific individuals to take part of an important process despite either their lack of knowledge of an already existing framework in the adult cannabis industry across the nation, or simply because of a genuine lack of interest in standing up a robust and fair set of rules for cannabis businesses due to their personal belief that cannabis should not be legalized in the first place. In closing, I'd like to remind the senators and the board members here today that the legal cannabis movement is supported by a majority of the people on this island. And yes, the Cannabis Control Board was established to regulate, among other things, licensing, cultivation, selling, taxation of cannabis products. But as public servants, the board also has an ethical obligation to see this industry succeed. They owe it to the people of Guam to give the adult use cannabis industry a real shot at thriving. But as the rules are currently written, the board set it up for failure. Lastly, allowing these rules to lapse into law with all of its flaws would be disingenuous to all the businessmen and women who are risking their livelihoods by attempting to jump into this new emerging industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salas. Next, we have Stephen Salas.
Buenas and half a day. Good morning, senators. My name is Stephen Salas. I'm from the village of Baragata. I'm a product of the Marianas Islands. My mom is from Saipan. My dad is from Guam. I'm from both places. I represent the Marianas as a whole. Anyways, in regards to the current rules and regs as they stand, I am opposed, mainly on the cultivation aspect, as Mr. Salas had mentioned in regards to the nutrients. So I'm pretty sure that you guys have heard quite a lot of testimony regarding that, so I'm not going to go further into why. I'm ultimately here not for me. There are people out there that really need our help and want, you know what I mean, some guidance regarding the future of cannabis on Guam. We won't really know what this industry holds for us until we are given the opportunity to try. Give us that opportunity. We deserve that opportunity. We are all more educated than we were before. Allow us to reach favorable solutions so we could all proceed. It's been a long time coming. This is history in the making. We are all a part of the Guahan cannabis industry, and may we all represent well.
Thank you, Mr. Salas. Mr. James Wolford.
How's it going? I would like to address Article 5, Section 9503, Manufacturer's Requirements. There's a lot of stuff in here that basically kills the whole industry of edibles. There's a section here that says any food that requires refrigeration, freezing, or a hot holding unit to keep it safe for human consumption may not be infused with cannabis. Now, when you look at all the foods, that's the only options you got. You either refrigerate it, you keep it heated, or you freeze it to keep it safe. It basically killed the whole industry of edibles. There's a lot of people out there, veterans, elders, cancer patients, people cannot smoke. Not everybody can smoke the plant for the healing effects that it gives, or whatever they prefer. And it goes on to say more stuff that just makes no sense. Dairy products of any kind, such as butters, cheese, ice cream, milk, dried or cured meats, these are all illegal. Any food that has to be acidified to make shelvable, it's illegal. If you gotta can it or retort it. Fruits, vegetables, fruits and vegetable butters. Oh, sorry. With just this literature here that's written out here, any food that requires refrigeration, freezing, hot holding to keep it safe for human consumption must not be infused. I just don't understand why that is even part of the discussion, there's a ton of other stuff that I could go through, but I see a lot of people out there that got a lot of stuff to say, so I'll go ahead and come back if there's more time later on.
Do you still have about 3 minutes left if you wanted to add more, or you can come back later?
Yeah, we could come back later.
Okay, no problem. Thank you, Mr. Wolford. Next on the list, we have Mr. Joshua Camacho.
Good morning, senators. My name is Josh Camacho. I'm 33 years old from the village of Tamuning, and I'm the owner of 671 Grow Supply. So we're a horticulture supply shop. I opened up during the first year of COVID, so we're going on our third year of operation now. We've met a lot of people. We've helped a lot of people. I started out as a peddler's business out of my home. just delivering to our first clients, and business has grown tremendously thanks to the support of the community. After a lot of patience and frustration on behalf of myself, my customers, and the Guam cannabis community, I sadly have to oppose the implementation of the cannabis rules and regulations for recreational adult use as they are currently written, specifically focused to the section related to fertilizer requirements. Now, as a business owner who has done the research, made relationships with our vendors, has really studied the industry before it's launched here on Guam. This is really a rule that is nowhere in the world it's implemented for cannabis production. Most of the nutrients on the market, about 95% of them, are synthetically made. Now, the reason why they're synthetically made is because it allows minerals to bind to salts, which is easily dissolvable in water. So if you're shipping a 5-gallon bucket of liquid versus a 5-gallon bucket of powder, the 5-gallon bucket of powder is going to last you throughout the whole, let's say, first quarter of the year. That 5-gallon bucket of nutrients is going to last you one grow cycle. The cost of shipping that into the island is ridiculous, especially with gas prices up now. We've seen an increase of 15% in the last 2 years for just shipping costs alone. Okay, and this is reflected on the new administration and all the fuel costs and the tariffs. And so every 2 weeks, I get an email from our shipper saying, hey, prices went up in Hawaii for docking fees, fuel fees, this and that. So your prices increased too. So this is a battle that's ongoing with business owners here supplying not just fertilizer for cannabis, but also Home Depot supplies, a lot of soil and fertilizer to the local vegetable farmers. In the cannabis industry, all these companies are regulated by labs, right? You can't, if your nutrient is going to show up in a lab test, it's not for cannabis, right? So these companies have done their research. These nutrients are made specifically for cannabis. And you can grow anything in soil, water, as long as you feed it correctly, right? But your orchids, your cucumbers, your tomatoes, your cannabis, they all have different needs, just like us humans, right? To produce quality cannabis, you don't need to grow it organically. Myself, I try and cultivate organically because that's just the kind of product I like to produce, okay? On a commercial scale, when you're doing 10,000 square feet of cultivation, you want to minimize your risk in every way possible, right? So as Mr. Salas said, organic practices a lot of times introduce bugs, disease that sometimes you can't control in an organic setting, right? But with synthetics, it's a lot easier to control in a climate-controlled environment. I know that the board didn't make these rules for the final product because why put that redundancy on the product when there's also going to be lab testing, right? I think it's more towards the environmental impact of the island, which is something we all should think about because a 10,000 square foot facility on average weekly is going to use about 10,000 gallons of water on a weekly basis, okay? That water has got to be RO water, it's clean. So a lot of that water is going to be wasted. You're looking probably at like a 70% return when you actually use the Guam water from the tap, right? That's what your RO water will turn into. If anybody has a drinking water system in their house, they know that that tank takes a long time to fill up. And the reason for that is because it's filtering out all the impurities from Guam's water, the chlorine, the calcium, and it's making it safe to drink. Well, the plants need that too if you're going to be growing them with consistency and to offer that kind of quality control at the end of the day on your final product, right? So with the organic rules implemented as the way they are, with strictly organic farming practices that need to be implemented into the gardens, it's, for one, it's not cost effective. Two, you risk having all those pathogens introduced in an indoor environment, which are really hard to get rid of once they're in there, to be honest. You gotta rip out a bunch of stuff. You gotta rip out your air cons, you gotta rip out your filters, you know what I'm saying? It's very costly to the grower if they're not on top of things. And that large of a scale, it's really easy for things to get away from you quickly. So I don't think that the regulation should lock people into only using organics. If we do choose to allow synthetics, I think that there can be like an incentive for organic growers, right? So some people want to smoke that organic product or consume that organic product, either ingest it or rub it on their skin and that's fine, right? So you can have growers choose that. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me wrap this up. But anyway, you can have growers choose that. There's no business on island where the government tells you, hey, you have to make it this specific way or else you can't be in business. If clothing was made that way, where you had to go to Young's Trading Co., buy your t-shirts, go to High Five Printing, get all your stuff done there, you're monopolizing an industry, right? You're monopolizing businesses within that industry. So that's a big fear here too. But anyway, regardless of that, we have a way to mitigate the impact on the environment, and that's with runoff filtration. So I have a system that I offer to my commercial clients, and we have commercial clients that have invested, I want to say upwards to almost $1 million in equipment that is on island. So there's companies and people invested heavily into this, right? They're ready for this recreational market to launch, and that's why it hurts me to do this. But if we're going to allow this to happen,
Thank you, Mr. Camacho.
it needs to be filtered, and 70% of that can go back into the use of the farm. The other will go into the sewer system, but it will be clean, and that's the main point. I think that why this rule was formed. So, thank you for your time, and if we can consider that, I think that would be a viable option.
Thank you, Mr. Camacho.
Quick.
Trying to stay on time here,
Sorry,
so
sorry.
I will allow you to, if you want, and you stick around after we get through
It's
everyone's...
a big issue. I mean...
Understood. After we get through everyone's testimony, you can come back and complete your
Thank you.
testimony. I just want to allow everyone the chance to be able to testify today. I know a lot of people have signed up. Okay. Next, we have Jonathan Savares. And just as a reminder, members of the panel, keep it to 5 minutes. Hang around. When we get through everyone's testimony, you can come back and complete your testimony. Mr. Savares.
Howdy, Senators. My name is Jonathan Savares. I am currently the patient representative on the Medical Cannabis Commission and have been an advocate for cannabis reform on Guam for quite a few years. First and foremost, I want to thank you, the Senators of the 36th Guam Legislature, for allowing me to testify and share my thoughts on the proposed rules and regulations that are going to affect the cannabis industry. I would like to thank the Cannabis Control Board and Vanessa William and her team for putting in the time and energy to create these rules and regulations. I know it was not an easy task. Unfortunately, today, as much as I want to support these rules wholeheartedly, I cannot do so. In my review of the proposed rules and regulations, I had realized that the CCB is trying to implement an organic standard onto all cultivators on this island, well, at least within the recreational industry. This is not consistent with what successful cannabis programs consist of. One of the basic principles of agriculture is that that different farmers will have different practices and methods. In the previous public hearing, as it was alluded to by the chairwoman of the CCB, there was much testimony. And I want to bring up one of the testimonies from a cooperative extension agent, Roland Kidigwa, from the University of Guam. And he testified in opposition to the standards months ago. Him and many other people testified against these organic standards months ago. When we want to talk about, we heard the public, it was testified not to do this. And he said, quote, "I really don't want to see you, the CCB, tie the hands of the growers. Synthetic fertilizers is a tool in the toolbox. And I really ask you guys, the CCB, to reconsider that." He had echoed the same concerns I am bringing up today as almost everybody up in this panel, as well as many other people in that public hearing forum setting. I say stringent because when looking at the medical cannabis rules and regulation in Public Law 34-80, the cannabis cultivators have the option to grow cannabis the best way that they can with the best practices they implement that will pass laboratory standard testing standards. This is what I have seen to be more consistent with regulations in states that have robust cannabis programs. Not forcing the hands of the cultivator to cultivate to a standard that has not yet been proven. That's what public health has learned from site visits to the states years ago. That's how these cultivation standards in Public Law 34-80 were put together. By going out there, looking at the challenges and struggles and learning and the learning curves that cannabis regulators and businesses have faced. In talking to one of the regulatory inspectors in Arizona, he mentioned that he informed me that, or in talking to him about the proposed rules and regulations, he had informed me about 90% of their cultivation facilities that he has visited and inspected use synthetic nutrients. Those who use organics are having issues with pest management. If we want to have issues with pest management, then let's do that. But we need to give the farmers a fighting chance. I believe that if we want to have a robust cannabis industry with the massive amount of taxes that the government is forecasting, we have to give the cultivators the ability to grow how they need to with methods that have been tried and true. But rather than following states that have created successful cannabis programs, we on Guam have reinvented the wheel. These rules are asking for cultivators who have done research to throw that out the window and to conform to these standards. This is why I cannot support these rules at this time. For cultivators who do not agree with these rules and want to help patients grow medicine and participate in an industry, then go medical. For information about the medical cannabis program has been available. The medical cannabis program can accept applications, but we haven't heard that. If you want to participate and you don't like these rules, call public health. Check the website. The rules and regulations are there. The applications for people to apply are there. I thank all of you, and I thank the CCB, and I thank everybody who's out in that hall that you guys can't, that the viewing public can't see. There's at least 30, 40 people out there, and I want to make note of that. And I thank you guys for hearing our testimony and hope we can address these cultivation issues and standards because this was detrimental to the industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tavares. Okay, so everyone on the panel has testified. I'll now allow my colleagues the opportunity to ask again. Let's keep it one question for this panel per colleague. Senator Ada.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any questions. I'd just like to thank them for their testimonies, as detailed as it was with the cultivation and also the fertilizer issue. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ada. Senator Nelson.
No, thank you for your testimony. We really appreciate it. I hope that we can do something about the issues that you're addressing, the current concerns that you have in the rules, and see if there's a common ground somewhere. Usually this is just a public hearing that will finalize what is here in paper. unless something else is changed via bill. So thank you so much.
Senator Duenas?
No questions, Mr. Chair. I always try to interject a little bit of humor, so having singing in a choir, I can tell you you're all on tune. It's loud and clear that there's some issues here. So I want to thank you for showing up this morning. It looks like between the panels, there's several things to address here. But thank you for your passionate and eloquent testimony. Jesús Masi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. Senator Perez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just want to thank the panel for your testimony today, and hopefully we can address these issues as well. Thank you.
Senator Titagwe?
I do thank you so much for coming down here and have the courage, and I appreciate you really thoroughly looking over these rules and the issues. I'm concerned about the edible part too, because most people would rather, eat than smoke it, for health reasons. So I'm definitely going to ask public health the issues that surround that area, as well as the fertilization. Has maybe Ed Salas, is that your first name, Ed, or Mr. Salas? John?
Sean?
Chuck?
Sean, yeah.
Sean. Hey, Sean. Okay. Sorry, my hearing is bad. Sean. You had a great testimony. Please email it to me, please, regarding those concerns. Josh, too, as well. Email her. These testimonies are very important, as we go through the looking at the rules and regulations, because we can make amendments, on the floor. And I'm sure that a lot of this stuff, the majority of stuff in these rules and regulations are good, but that issue on fertilization edibles are a great concern, and hopefully public health is here so I can ask them what we can do, but did the farmers co-op, I'm sure you guys been very attentive to these meetings that they were having in the public hearing. Did the farmers co-op at all? If anyone can answer this, a farmers co-op come and show up during these hearings to discuss these using fertilization, the synthetics? Go ahead, Mr. Savares, we'll start with you.
So, according to my recollection, I know that there are farmers who have come out and spoke, but not representing the farmers co-op. I can tell you that in the previous public hearing, the 3-day one that Vanessa was alluding to earlier, I know that there were different people from UOG who work up at UOG that have come out and made testimonies against these organic standards, and they work with the UOG agricultural department. So the experts there were expertise from the university that came out against these standards, and those experts fell onto deaf ears.
Mr. Savares, I appreciate if you can get me that copy of that.
In my testimony.
Okay, great.
I actually cited the page number where Roland Kittigawa's statements began.
Yeah.
And if you go through I only refer to Roland Kittigawa because he is a cooperative extension agent up at the university with expertise. But if you look in the rest of it, there was at least 6 or 7 other people who did mention the nutrient issues, but I didn't want to allude to those people because I know you guys are always looking for the experts, some sort of expertise when you answer these questions.
Ed?
Thank you.
Sean? Any concur?
I concur with John.
Okay. Mr. Salas?
I concur as well.
Okay.
There's actually a YouTube video of the first public hearing they did, and like John was saying, a number of us actually came out and expressed our opinion on this.
You said a YouTube video?
Yeah, it's actually, if you look up the Cannabis Control Board public hearings,
okay.
It's one of the first hearings that they did during COVID. It was a Zoom meeting.
Okay, I'll pull that out.
There were a few of us that actually came out and expressed our concerns about that. But Mr. Wistic is correct. Pesticides are more what you're seeing as runoff into our groundwater that is causing problems. And to further emphasize on what we were saying earlier, you have farmers growing vegetables here on Guam with stuff bought from Home Depot, and it's not regulated, and people are consuming it. And there is a lot of cancer on the island, and I could
go on and on and on.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay. No, I definitely
With the
understand what you're saying.
proper research done, I'm sure they'll find
Right.
something in our groundwater that is causing that. You know, and to mitigate that, we do have systems which are available through our store to help these cultivators
Okay.
comply to EPA standards.
Okay, thank you so much. And just one more, I'm sorry. Is it James or? James, right? James, on the edible part. Did you provide any examples during any of those meetings, the public hearing meetings on the edibles?
No.
Okay, I'd like to hear that. If you can just email it, you can find us on the website. Just email us those considerations.
You would like me to email, what was that again?
I'm sorry?
What would you like me to email?
Just email me your recommendations as to corrective measures on this, the rules and regs to allow that type of.
Okay.
Okay.
So instead of just striking out this whole section, go ahead and.
But then you have to come back with something that's safe. You know, I mean, public health is there for a reason. Regulatory
yeah.
agencies to keep us all safe. So.
Well, one of the things is like they're literally attacking all of the edibles, like pumpkin pies, custard pies, and any pies that contain an egg, and you know they go down to like very specifics. But it's no different from any restaurant or lunch truck. If it's old, you throw it out. If it's
Right.
frozen foods, you know, that's leftovers, that's no good, you throw it out. It's like everything else. Like, you can't just say because cannabis has entered the ingredient that all of a sudden we can't consume it. When you look at the medical side, there's already laws in place that allow all of these. So those are laws, and these rules are contradicting stuff that already exists in place. You know, it's kind of.
It's true on the medical side. Yeah, that makes complete sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why they had to come back around and kill this whole industry.
Okay. Well, my time is up. So if you have any other additional information, please just email us because, like I said, you know, we have to make some amendments to the legislation. So due to time, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Tidegui. Okay, we'll wrap up this panel. Thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you for coming out this morning.
Appreciate your time.
And if we can bring up the next panel, and we'll continue the public hearing with the next panel of those who have signed up to testify this morning.
All right, thanks, man. So maybe we can come back in?
Okay. Hi, good morning, everyone. All right, we've got the next panel up. I'm going to go by who's signed in on the sheet first. So I have a Mr. Jose Babauta. Is there a Jose Babauta here on the panel? No? Mr. Farron, I believe, Ezra Farron. Is there a Farron? Okay. Andrea Pellicani.
Hello. Good morning. My name is Andrea Pellicani, and I'm here testifying in my personal capacity. I am on the Medical Cannabis Commission, but I am here on behalf of Grassroots Guam, who has been advocating for responsible and safe cannabis access since 2015. Grassroots Guam was also the only licensed cannabis company on Guam. This is a bit of deja vu here. I do want to commend Senator Tina Muñoz Barnes because she was in this same exact spot at one point, faced with rules that had a few fatal flaws, and she made the very difficult decision and had the courage all by herself to reject the rules because she understood that there was much needed improvement for them that needed to be done. And she didn't know if she was going to have the votes to pass a strengthened law, but she worked hard to put that strengthened law together. And what we have now is a whole new program for medical, which has been vetted by third parties, and I'll talk about that real quick, but I'm going to stay on the topic. I just do want to commend her for that because it was politically challenging for her to do that by herself. And then I also want to thank Senator Dennis Rodriguez because he had a public markup where stakeholders actually got to come in and participate in the markup process. So he opened that process up to the public, and I greatly appreciate it. The Americans for Safe Access reviewed Guam's cannabis programs in the 2021 State of States report card as follows. Guam's cannabis implementation has been rife with long delays and administrative stalemates. When the Guam Cannabis Industry Act was signed into law in 2019, regulators were required to release rules governing the program by April 2020. Regulators did not propose rules until July 2021 and are only now working to set up a functioning program. In the meantime, regulators announced that cannabis consumption for persons 21 years of age or older is permitted, as is legal possession and gifting of up to 1 ounce of dried flower and home cultivation of up to 3 flowering and 3 non-flowering plants. All sales of adult use cannabis and sales of manufactured cannabis products are not permitted until regulations are finalized. In the meantime, the organization of a functioning medical access program continues to languish. In 2018, the head of Guam's Department of Public Health and Social Services resigned, citing a lack of staff, budget, or expertise necessary to develop or implement the program. Guam deserves credit for allowing physicians to recommend medical cannabis for any qualifying condition, but it needs to open dispensaries and address administrative delays to effectively serve patients. The territory illustrates that a good program on paper does not necessarily translate to functioning, safe, and legal patient access. Guam also needs to improve its staff training in cannabis, cultivation, dispensing, and manufacturing, and increase civil rights protections in the areas of housing, organ transplants, and employment. I bring up this report and the review because it provides a clear analysis of the rules that we have existing and even clear guidelines for areas of needed improvement in our regulatory scheme by an outside party. These are people who all they do is review the rules and policy in different states and territories, and that's how they reviewed our programs. So they have a whole report card of areas where we could make improvement. I do believe that the current proposed adult use rules are still in draft form and needs a little bit more vetting. I do recognize the hard work that's been put in, and this is a very long process. But I think ultimately my concern is that these rules, I know the intention was there and it was very much spoken of during the Cannabis Control Board meetings, of which I attended quite a few of them. I do not believe that these rules will benefit local startup companies. I do not believe that that is going to be the outcome of these rules. And I do this having to clear regulatory hurdles to get my own license at one point. So I understand where those hurdles are. Not theoretically, realistically, trying to get financing, trying to get through Department of Land Management and how much that could cost. You could lose the shirt off your back just waiting and trying to get through this process. So I just did want to make that abundantly clear. Sometimes these processes are not necessarily, with all the good intentions, that's great, but it really benefits those with deep pockets and unlimited financing and funding and that type of thing. My concern about these rules also lapsing was that most states are converging at a standard of 10 milligrams per serving with the maximum of 10 servings per package. This is for safety purposes, accidental ingestion, that type of thing. This is one of the main concerns that was brought up during deliberation of the law. Senator Ridgell will remember the lot of discussion about the number of hospitalizations. So I humbly urge this body to adopt this threshold. This was brought up during the public hearings. I also provided it in public testimony. And so I can only deduce that it was the intention of the CCB to omit this very important threshold for adult use cannabis. Again, that's 10 milligrams per serving with the maximum of 10 servings per package. Many today have testified on the prohibition of synthetic cultivation aids, which I concur is problematic. I will leave that technical discussion to the farmers. They're familiar and well-versed. We concur, we recommend to remove this prohibition from indoor cultivators at least, and mandate filtration systems that can be guided by Guam EPA, since they will be charged with wastewater management. Also, since the proposed cultivation aids will subject crops to be more prone to mold, rot, and pests, that it be optional, and that the Department of Agriculture put a certification program together and grant a break on excise taxes to accommodate for the financial impact of lengthier crop cycles, loss of crop, for cultivators who should choose this route. In addition, we had some discussion about the vertical integration, so I provided a report on vertical integration. I do believe that the adoption of the prohibition of vertical integration was, based on the discussion again at the meetings, I don't believe that the assumptions that were made about vertical integrations were true. And so I wanted to provide that report to you so you could read it on your own and see that most states do not mandate or ban vertical integration. So basically it's an optional vertical integration. Only 2 states impose outright prohibitions.
Ms. Pellicani, I apologize. Your time is up. If you can stay and you can complete your
I will.
Your testimony. Thank you. Sid, is it Sid Morales?
Mostales.
Mostales, I apologize. Sid Mostales.
Hafaday and good morning, Speaker Ridgell, Chairman and members of the Committee on Economic Development, Agriculture, Power and Energy, Utilities, and the Arts. My name is Sid Mostales. I'm the Assistance Programmer with the Medical Cannabis Program for the Department of Public Health and Social Service. I also serve as the Director's Public Health and Social Service, Arthur San Agustin Designee on the Cannabis Control Board. My testimony here today is on behalf of the Department of Public Health and Social Service relative to the Cannabis Control Board's proposed rules and regulations and does not represent the views or comments of the Cannabis Control Board. Given the mandates for which the Department of Public Health and Social Service are given by the law, our overarching goals are for the comprehensive, responsible implementation of a regulatory framework for cannabis in Guam that will protect public health, safety by strengthening where appropriate laws and enforcement measures, and establish and enforce a system of strict production, distribution, and sales, taking a public health approach with regulations of quality and safety. Examples were child-proof packaging, warning labels, restriction of access with programmatic support of additional treatment, mental health support, and education programs, and application of taxes, with the objectives to prevent the distribution of cannabis to minors, minimize the risks associated with patterns of consumption, including frequent use and co-use of cannabis with alcohol and tobacco, and exacerbation of other adverse public health consequences associated with cannabis use. We want to also ensure people are well informed through sustained and appropriate public health campaigns, and for youth in particular, ensure that risks are understood. Provide for enforcement and/or progressive penalties to punish more serious cannabis, particularly selling and distributing to children and youth, selling outside the regulatory framework, and operating a motor vehicle while under the influence of cannabis. With these goals and objectives in mind, I've been serving as a member of CCB to facilitate and review and approve of the proposed rules and regulations in the midst of responding to COVID-19 pandemic. And it was in our intention to do the utmost during the public health emergency. However, time constraints and resources impacted our capacity and ability to respond accordingly to our due diligence. For the past 2 months, we have been able to return to our duties and responsibilities. We understood our limitations in the knowledge and expertise with cannabis and initiate the process of procuring subject matter experts in cannabis, more specifically, consultants who solely serve regulatory agencies to assist us. It is only in the past 2 weeks we were able to work with our consultants, Cannabis Public Policy Consulting LLC, and therefore our comments today are not meant to be contrary to the CCB, but as a result of the recent secured professional consulting services. Given that DPHS is responsible for implementation of the medical cannabis program and that the two programs will be regulated independent of one another, the draft regulations do not include any insights into the medical program's preservation. The following are immediate considerations that should be visited in an effort to align the medical program to the impending adult use program. We would like alignment in product manufacturing and testing standards, align non-clinical oversight of commercial activities, and assure DPHSS maintains oversight over clinical aspects of the program, including but not limited to patient qualifying conditions and enrollment, practitioners' activities, and product criteria of medical application. Specific to the proposed rules and regulations, we are recommending the following. Relative to Article 7, we recommend, number 1, there is no language on maximum serving service of total package of THC. Our justification is the regulation of total cannabis potency for cannabis ingestible goods is a core principle in the public health framework. This helps new consumer understand how to triage dosage as well as aid in preventing children from becoming very ill if accidentally consumed. Our recommendations are, recommend that you consider adding limitations for ingestible goods to ensure no products are potentially harmful to public health. This could be done by amending sections to include common serving size limitations. Example, 5 milligram, 10 milligram THC, or as part of the product approval, include the ability to deny products over a certain percentage of THC. Number 2, section 9704E, we would like to incorporate the following changes. A list of pharmacologically active ingredients, including but not limited to THC concentrations listed as total THC and activated THC-A, and CBD concentrations listed as total CBD. And our recommendations to add the following. Activate CBD-A milligrams per serving and per package serving per package, and the total THC as defined herein, and CBD, and other cannabinoid amount in milligrams for each serving, and the package total for prepared cannabis as applicable. Recommended also to include the following. Total THC in milligrams per serving and per package must be in red fonts, at least 2 font size larger than the surrounding text, bolded, highlighted in yellow, or highlighted in white in case the background is yellow.
Mr. Mostalis, I apologize. Your time is up.
Thank you.
But I just wanted to clarify, so you are making recommendations as the Department of Public Health to make some changes to the rules and regulations that were adopted by a board that the Department of Public Health has a seat on?
Yes, we just received, as stated earlier, we just received our consultants 2 weeks ago.
So the
and-
only thing I would have to say about that is it's very concerning that these recommendations weren't made at the Cannabis Control Board level by the Department of Public Health, who has a seat on the Cannabis Control Board. So we will allow for your full testimony to be submitted, but I just have to register that concern of mine, considering Public Health is a member of the Control Board. So.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. We will move on now to the next people on the sign-in sheet, which is Mr. Kevin Uggan.
Can you hear me now? I just wanted to say, please excuse me for how I read this. I'm usually in the background and in the behind the scenes area. My role's never in the front. Hafa and greetings to all here today, members of the legislature, committee members, and members of the Cannabis Control Board. My name is Kevin Uggan, and I am here to share my testimony in support of the proposed rules and regulations for the Cannabis Control Board, from the Cannabis Control Board. I am here as a private citizen and a craft grower who enjoys growing and cultivating. My main goal is to perfect my craft and have the best quality product for personal use and consumption. As I have gotten older, what once was a recreational use product has turned into much more. I have found cannabis use to be beneficial to me in gaining a full restful night due to sleep issues, as well as relief to minor aches and pains related to my long history of employment as a pipe fitter and a welder and old age. There are many other benefits with the approval of the proposed rules and regulations that not only affect private citizens like me, but the island as a whole. I will cite information regarding the CNMI cannabis industry on an article written by the Guam Daily Post on March 10, 2022. In the article, it stated that the CNMI reported a gross revenue of $81,465.44 in July 2021. In August, it was $143,159.49. In September, $76,269.92. In October, $64,151.02. In November, $118,765.78. And in December, $171,978.78. It showed a steady increase, which also provided retail and production jobs. This is what I hope to see in my lifetime for the island of Guam. I believe that our island can benefit substantially from the cannabis industry and will be able to create a new industry that will continue to show a steady growth, just like the CNMI. Or we can exceed and do better. Something in my throat. I returned to the island recently after spending a month in the mainland. I visited every legal dispensary and cannabis bar that I could, as well as attended a pre-party for 420 to observe and sample high-quality products. In my personal opinion, Guam cannabis products is at the same level and in some instances exceeds the cannabis products held from the mainland in quality, taste, and appearance. This is a good indicator of the increased development and education of our island cultivators, a sign of good faith that once these rules and regulations are approved, we can expect to see steady growth in cannabis in the cannabis industry that will even surpass the gross revenue of the CNMI. I would be remiss if I didn't mention some areas that are a bit concerning to me. As a small craft grower, I do see some hindrance in any possible transition from hobby to legitimate business. The main area would be fees associated with becoming a legitimate business. There are some concerns that the industry would be monopolized by those off-island investors and those who have means to pay for several different licenses. All I ask is that the fee schedule be reviewed so that other craft growers and small cultivators would be able to consider the transition into business. All I ask is that you think about all the homegrown cannabis cultivators and give us a fighting chance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Uggan. Janae Uggan.
Hafa day, everybody. Thank you so much for allowing us to speak today, Senator Ridgell and Senator Taitigui. I did submit a written testimony, but I will not be reading that. I decided to share a story and to kind of make it more personal, and the reason why I'm here as a private citizen, a mother and a wife. As you've known, I have worked in social services for many years, and I've seen our people struggle, and I've seen many families who I've worked with struggle, but make that transition from being on public assistance to becoming a full-fledged business. And that's why I'm here today. I'm not too sure if you know our story, but a couple of years ago, Kevin and I, we were both laid off about the same time. And because of that, we had to find it within ourselves to find some type of gainful employment to be able to support our family. And through that time, we found that food and the niche market of creating Denancy, which is still smoking, and that's, we were able to do that. The process was hard. To get a business license, to get a sanitary permit for food, to be able to market, and just to do all of that. We did not have a flagship store because it wasn't necessarily affordable for us at that moment, so we did night markets. And so that's why I'm here today, to be able to talk and to represent smaller people, the small groups of niche market producers who produce small batches of consumables, edibles, basically. I am going to defer to everybody on their expertise. John, public health, the CCB, everybody knows what they're talking about. The Guam Cannabis Association, they all have valid points. But for me, I would just like to also reiterate that the fee schedules are really not attainable for somebody who is, let's say, a mother of four who is on a single income, who would like to be able to increase their income by providing edibles for veterans. When we were in the mainland, I met a lady, and she was a single mother as well, who was selling consumables at a farmer's market. And to me, that was mind-blowing. I never in my life thought I would go to a night market or a farmer's market and see a single mother with her kids selling brownies and cookies and honey. Everything she produced, all consumables, all infused with cannabis. And I would like to be able to see that here on Guam, because Guam is really, our economy is really pushed forward by the small businesses. As much as everybody thinks it's the big businesses, no. It's people like me, it's people who go to the night market and who go out of their way to be able to get a business license, to become a legitimate business, to be able to become self-sustaining, to be able to do that to support their family. Now at this rate, while I'm looking at the proposed rules and regulations, I don't see that feasible for people like me or for other people who I know who would like to take that step into legitimate business. So I ask that you do review the fee schedule. As much as I would like to support it, and I want to see the cannabis industry in Guam grow, because I do believe it will change our economy. I cannot remiss the fact that the fee schedule is not attainable for people like me who would like to be able to be in the business legitimately. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Uggan. Next, Raquel. Forgive me, I can't read the last name.
It's okay.
If you could state your name for the record, please.
My name is Raquel Madrigalejo, and I am a stakeholder in the cannabis edible industry. I'm here opposed to the recreational rules of edible manufacturing. I believe that it provides a lack of variety, which will increase black market. The potency issue can also be changed as well because there's no potency on your regulations. As far as all the candy, that's what I'm actually here for. For the gummies and all that, I believe we shouldn't ban it as long as the company provides child-resistant packaging, as well as all the sets of ingredients and all of that will be placed on the packaging as well. So in terms of adult use of cannabis, I believe that we should fully rely on the companies producing this, so they would be in compliance with the rules and regulations, but unfortunately, you guys capped on literally everything. Medical side does not have this. They have the ability to do most of everything, but for recreational, you can't really cook or bake. You can't really make edibles and turn THC-A to THC without implementing heat. So I'm not sure how you guys are going to, we need to change that. As well as the use of edible rosin and trim. We have different endocannabinoids in our system. And if we just use edible rosin, some people will not actually get hit or feel the effects of that. We need to take into consideration the entourage effect when consuming edibles. So I did send a letter in, Setter, so it has all of that. But thank you so much for letting me testify. But as far as edibles, anybody stepping into the recreational side, unfortunately, will not really get anything done. Butter is the main component in every edible maker here on island. Not many people do other things as well. Even Rick Simpson oil, only a couple people here on island know how to do that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's everyone except ma'am.
Good morning, senators, and to all those listening. I'm Leilani Navarro from the Division of Environmental Health of the Department of Public Health and Social Services. I'm just here to answer any questions. The Division of Environmental Health was not part of the Cannabis Control Board, but our contribution to the rules and regulations was the development of the labeling and packaging article. And I think Sid had already submitted our testimony as a whole for the department. I just wanted to, put into your radar that the Division of Environmental Health is mandated to regulate the manufacture, distribution, retail sales of consumer commodities through the Guam Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act and the Guam Food Code. So this will include food and cosmetics infused with CBD, THC, and other cannabis-derived products. So if the legislative body wishes to allow cannabis-infused foods to be manufactured and sold on Guam, amendments will need to be made to the either the Guam Cannabis Industry Act or the local Guam Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, because as it is right now, cannabis and other CBD infused products are not considered approved additive in food. So that's in Title 10, Chapter 40, Guam Code annotated. So if our recommendation is if the legislature would allow for these rules and regulations, we would need to adopt a catch-all legislation that recognizes cannabis as an allowable ingredient in food products. In our written testimony, we included sections of both the local and the federal Guam Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act referring to the sections that makes CBD an approved additive, or any food product where CBD is added is considered actually an adulterated food, so based on our local and federal laws. So if there's an attachment to our written testimony that actually provides recommendations on languages that we can use to allow for cannabis edible products, if you may wish to adopt that. So that's just my addition to Sid's testimony. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this time, call upon my colleagues to ask questions. Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony. Janae, I appreciated you sharing about the small business. You're absolutely right. You know, just to clarify that these rules we're just having a public hearing on, in order for us to make changes on these rules, we have to submit a bill, and then it has to go to a public hearing and then go on to session floor. But all in all, the way these bills are written will stand unless a bill is submitted to address the concerns. I appreciate your concerns, and I support the perspective you're bringing, and to help improve our Cannabis Industry Act and also to improve the rules and regulations. So thank you very much for your testimony.
Senator Tyree.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, everyone, for testifying and going off script. Janine, that was good. It was good. But I have your testimony here as well, and I read it. It was really good too as well. So I appreciate everyone who was testifying, especially the public health. I do understand your issue. I mean, when COVID hit, I mean, we passed this in 2019, and then, you know, a year later, COVID hit, and everything was, you know, kind of on lockdown for a while. And then today you come to us saying that you've hired a consulting agency called the Cannabis Public Policy Consulting, LLC. I'm really happy you did that. I'm just surprised that you just did 2 weeks ago with these rules and regulations. But, and a lot of the concerns I'm sure you heard on the food side, and I was gonna drill you on that, but in your testimony, which I have a copy here, and you didn't have enough time to read it in the 5 minutes given to you, the attachment A, very good. I mean, this gives us a guide to find how we can adjust the concerns that a lot of people have come today to talk about edibles, you know. So definitely, Mr. Chair, these recommendations on making adjustments to 40109, et cetera, down the line. Title 10, Guam Code Annotated, Chapter 21, this is really good. I really appreciate the work that you guys did on that. Also, if you can take back with you the comments that were made earlier with regards to fertilization, with this company that you hired, to look into the other areas too that maybe you can provide us. But other than that, I appreciate it. Andrea, the fight continues, and I'm glad that to see that you're working hard on the medical side of it. There's a lot of concerns. There was a concern earlier, so about their children, you know, in a situation to allow them to take some kind of medical relief through cannabis for their child. So I hope you can, if you heard his testimony, I believe it was Mr. Salas, I think. So I appreciate if you look into that. Okay, thank you. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you to this panel.
Can I add one more
Yes,
really
please.
quick thing? You know, it's really a double-edged sword, because as much as we would love to see the rules and regulations get passed so that we can move forward and start to build our economy, there are some issues that really do plague us, and I think that's all been brought up today. So we just ask, well, for me, as a private citizen, I just ask that if the rules and regs do get passed, please don't forget everything we've said today. Let's try to work together so we can build the economy of our island and be able to make everybody have a seat at the table. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. At this time, I'll go ahead and dismiss this panel. Ms. Pelcani, if you still had more you wanted to add, you can go ahead and stay, because my understanding, we'll see how many we have on the next panel. You might actually be able to speak on the next panel, depending on how many are signed up. Right now, I have 3 more members signed up for the next panel. We've got Nicholas Brown, Emma Wright, and Kirsten Rosani. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing it correct.
We would just like to say that we will be still submitting written testimony after. Thank you
Yes,
very
please.
much.
Thank you. All right, thank you. We will begin now with this panel, starting with Nicholas Brown.
Hafide, good morning. My name is Nicholas Brown. I'm from the village of Chalampago, and I'm also the founder of the Release Shop, Guam's first licensed CBD hemp store. And today I'm not only representing myself, but also my community and my clients. Though we only currently dispense hemp products, I have suffered all the issues one could encounter within the cannabis industry: stringent application processes, government search and seizures, break-ins to my business location, and denials by banks to open a merchant processing service. The last 2 mentioned are the biggest concerns I believe need to be addressed, not only for the safety of businesses, but also for the clients that wish to consume cannabis. Like many other business owners, I rely heavily on services provided by the financial institutions to operate efficient business, but because of current federal restrictions, no funds allocated from cannabis-related businesses are barred or are allowed by banks across the nation. And of all the hurdles I've encountered, this is the worst. Because of my transparency as a business, I continue to suffer. The side effects of not being able to bank openly as a cannabis business include the following. My companies and the safety of my employees is always threatened by the risk of being associated as a cash-based business. Earlier, just before coming in here, G4S alerted me that alarm went off and my heart dropped. I'm here talking to you today about this financial institution. My first concern was to call my employee and ask if she's okay. With God's grace, everything's okay, but this is a constant reminder that we are at risk, not only as a business owner, being able to receive currencies from my customer, but my safety and my employees are also at risk. And openly telling our customers ahead of time that we are cash-based only heightens that risk for potential threats by people watching us. The second is our clients are always left in a state of shock to find out that we do not accept any form of cashless payments. And they're forced to travel back and forth to the nearest ATM, then just to come back and buy their product. I have tried multiple times to reach out to Canopy and other cashless services that do entertain the cannabis industry in the States. But because of Guam's international title within the national standard, I guess, within the bank, they will not do business with me. I have put my personal financial bank accounts at risk because I was forced to use PayPal services. And once they found out I sold cannabis, I am now officially barred from any type of cashless payment. If my name is put in, I am automatically denied. And I think this is another service that we need to try to figure out that we could get a Guam-based service that will entertain us because of our international title. And the third, that's the most recent, and I think it's going to have the biggest negative impact if not addressed. I can no longer provide taxable payment or paychecks to my employees that are critically needed by all adults to establish a transparent source of income. And without doing this, how are our employees going to be able to build their personal credit, build their personal bank accounts, and then, you know, go to their day-to-day lives because they don't have a transparent source of income? I have been overcoming and persistently trying to address these issues since 2018. And I only suffer this, and I only sell CBD. So imagine the heightened risk associated with being an official THC cannabis business. Banks will no longer, banks have been given out surveys now to every customer and asking for their transparency that they are not opening any business associated with cannabis. If they do say yes, they are either denied or they have to go through a really stringent review process. I have opened multiple accounts at every bank and I have been denied by every bank. My current bank account right now allows me to deposit, but I cannot do anything else. That's such as using a regular debit card to just go and pay for my services, provide products for my store, or even to pay the government my power, water, and my taxes needed at the end of the month like every other business. If this issue is not addressed as soon as possible, then I really don't think the cannabis industry is going to be able to flourish as much as we hope so to help boost our economy and also provide jobs for our community. And then it will also leave consumers at risk every time they have to withdraw and go to the store to buy. And I just also want to remind you that my customers over the years that had to suffer that, many of them have been certified disabled, they have been cancer patients, military veterans, and most importantly, are Manunku. They have traveled all across the island to find their almond, medicine, or anything else they would like, just to find a bit of relief, only to be disappointed that they have to leave again. You already know Guam's traffic is very hard on us. I had to move multiple times to try to get locations to the nearest ATM, and in light of the zoning requirements, if I want to be a cannabis business, I will have to move once again. And looking at the zoning requirements, a lot of places are nowhere near ATMs that they want it to be or open, for rent right now. And another thing on the location is that if the person owning the property is under a federal loan, they would not be able to accept a cannabis-related business that could rent. I have been denied many times to open my establishment because of that. And once again, I am only selling CBD.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Next, Emma Wright.
Half a day, and good morning. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to share my stance on the rules and regulations for the emerging cannabis industry. And this morning, I just want to say that I support cannabis, but the way the rules and regulations are written now very much stifles the opportunity for Guam to truly utilize a self-sustainable industry, something that actually can be grown from seed to home. You know, the opportunities for industrial, and economic growth, hempcrete, concrete, fibers. There's so many opportunities that I feel like the rules and regulations written as they stand stifle all of that and just further monopolize, the way most industries typically work here. It's to the benefit of a few, and it self-sabotages, and so that is my stance.
Thank you. Kirsten? Could you please say your full name for the record?
Hafide, my name is Kirsten Limtiaco Bamba Rosario. I am here to talk about the speed of the process and the effects it is having in people with medical issues and the stigma that is accompanied with the use of cannabis. My mother-in-law has recently been off prescribed narcotic pain killers for a very long time. And to help manage her pain, we've taught her how to use cannabis. But she's still going through these issues by the associated stigma. I want to say I am a canna mom. During my time of my pregnancy, a lot of canna moms would use medicinal cannabis, right, is what we teach our kids for treatment of illness, aches and pains, morning sicknesses. And of course, through the pandemic, we've also been going through some issues as well, taking care of our kids at home. But to know that even as a canna mom, you could be a great parent as well. I'm here today and to speak of how the process is going to go. Everybody here has really important information, but really it's the process and how long are we going to wait after this hearing for things to be moved and things to be set in place so that we as a group united here today can use this without the stigma of the general public or, throughout things. I want to say I travel out to many islands. And I've never seen it I've never seen the stigma so big here on Guam. And throughout the islands, I've had a local community, an older women community come to me and say, oh, let's smoke some weed. And that was really just something that was really different for me. I didn't have that growing up where parents were accepting that, and so really my mother-in-law, who has waited years for a medication because it's not approved, and who use medicinal marijuana every day and with us freely, with no judgment, really needs to happen. I've heard many stories of people passing and not being able to see this bill moved, and medical marijuana is used as a daily source of medicine, not only for them, but for me as well. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Mr. Darrell Harris.
Hockaday. Hi, my name is Darrell Harris, a local veteran, also a local bona fide farmer. We own and operate Almighty Microgreens. You might see our products in some of the restaurants and stores. We're now in Payless supermarkets. We also have a vested interest in the cannabis industry because we are focusing on concentrates. And not to beat a dead horse, just a little background. so you guys understand where our intentions are. You know, I lost both my parents to cancer, my mom in 2016. You know, unfortunately, like what the lady just said before me, not everybody gets this opportunity to see this legislature pass. And unfortunately for me, my mother was one of them. I saw early that concentrates really, really helped her. She got to try it one time. And it kind of just opened my eyes. And as a veteran as well, I was a combat medic in the Army. So learning how to be a medical professional is one of those things that are very stringently taught in the military. And even now, I work outside the military now. I can't disclose where my day job is. I'm in fear of losing that day job, and which is another reason why I want to tackle this issue of vertical integration. We need to be able to enter this market with all the tools of success, and not being able to vertically integrate puts somebody like me, a manufacturer, at great risk. Guam is a small island. Everybody's related here. Everybody has their families and businesses that they want to support, regardless of quality of product. And so, as you can see, I look like an outsider. I grew up looking like an outsider, even on paper, my name, oh, who's this outsider? And so I tend to not get that local support that I would like to have rallied behind me. So there's other manufacturers out there. They got local ties that are gonna have growers that would support them probably. And maybe they might not want to support me. So if I cannot find product to process in my facility is rendered useless. So by not being able to vertically integrate, not only am I not able to sustain this business venture of mine, I'm completely locked out. A cultivator could easily choose not to sell me the product that I want to buy from them, or worst case scenario, none of the cultivators are growing the specific type of product that we need for our solventless extraction. I believe back in 2020, we had a couple of town hall sessions. I spoke out again at those meetings, and I believe I educated the panel about solventless extraction. And since then, I see that you guys have actually stipulated solventless extraction in the regs. So I'm greatly appreciative of that. So now I'm in a position where I can't grow it. If a cultivator is growing what I need, but they don't want to freeze it because freezing your product isn't a common practice, then I cannot buy it from them, or they might not want to sell it to me. Or if I R&D my own genetics for them to grow for me, there's no binding agreement that says, okay, if you grow this for me, you can only sell it to me. And in my experience, cultivating these phenotypes, these genetics, figuring out which ones are going to work best takes a lot of work. So by me handing out these genetics to other cultivators in hopes that they're going to honor this agreement, that they'll only provide it to me to process in my facility, there's no protection for that. Now, all that IP that I put in, years of work, is in someone else's hands, and they can sell it to whoever. Once again, I'm in a position where maybe they might want to sell it to their cousin who's a manufacturer, or maybe they might not even want to dry it because the types of material that you would process in solventless manufacture are top quality cannabis. So freezing it might not be the most profitable thing for some folks, and they might not want to think like, why am I going to freeze it and give it to him if I can just dry it and get a better quality product? All we're trying to do is provide quality medicine to the folks. And after losing my parents, nothing's going to stop me from trying to help the public. So that's why we didn't wait around for cannabis legislation. We decided to become bona fide farmers, provide microgreen superfood. There's many ways to help the community. And so our intentions are to help the community. So by putting this type of restrictions on us, there's no way we're going to reach that full potential of being able to capitalize on helping the community. And there's folks in this community that are genuinely wanting to help and not have their hands tied behind their back. And in July, we have an event coming up. I'm hoping you guys can attend. We have some world-renowned hash masters flying in to talk about what we're trying to do. And I'm pretty sure you guys can get some enlightenment there. So if you guys want, we can talk afterwards and discuss more on that. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Mr. Zandro Macaroyo.
Hi, I don't know what else is going to be said about this whole laws and regulation, but I have a couple of concerns about transportation and the information that the government wants to know about the business opening up, such as the route of my driver going there, the make and model of the car, who's going there, the amount of weed that's in the car, the amount of cash that's in the car, the weight, plus the blueprints of exact buildings of every room in the business about what's going on in this room, what's going on in this room, where's all my cameras, where's all my sensors, where's all the light sensors equipment, where's all the everything else, all the blueprints of my building is going to be out there. That's and I'm worried that if that information suddenly gets leaked anywhere, my driver's safety concern is going to be one, he could get robbed or killed. Whose fault is that going to be? Mine, or is it because I gave my information and route and all that to, the government? You get it at So if like a blueprint of my place gets released and my place gets robbed, is that my fault, or is it because someone let that little information out? And then if it does get robbed, is it a guarantee, or is it just we assure you that it's not going to get leaked out? And if it does, and then I get robbed, or if my employee gets robbed, who's going to compensate for that loss if I'm assured that those things are not going to happen? So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. So at this time, I'll allow my colleagues to ask questions of this panel. Senator Nelson, Senator Tidebury.
Yeah. I'd like to thank you guys for coming out and having the courage to, state what you're doing with the pride in what the stigma that you were talking about earlier. Yeah, it's changed. Times are changing, and you guys are making that difference. And I truly understand with your comments about your parents. My mother also, she died of cancer, and the only thing that kept her coherent was the use of medicinal marijuana. And she's a person who doesn't even drink or smoke, doesn't even drive. She didn't even drive, let alone we tried to show her at least the good part of her life, the end part where she was able to still be coherent, the last days of her life. And I saw it too. That's when it really affected me. As far as the banking industry, I think Senator Ridgell brought up, some of the concerns or how to move forward with providing that kind of security that's needed. And I too knew about the issue of the laundry, washing this money and coming into the system. And it's a huge concern in that perspective. But I was just wondering, is there any jurisdictions, other jurisdictions that have some type of a safer mechanism in place to keep your employees safe, as well as, your facility from constantly being broken into?
As he mentioned earlier.
Please turn on the mic.
Yeah.
And
Hello.
Go ahead.
All right. So as he mentioned earlier, we're always at risk. And a big thing too, we are not insured. So even if we are broken into, our products cannot be covered. That's a big hurdle that stops the banks, is because no cannabis could be federally insured, no cannabis funds could be federally insured. So that's why they won't take us. What he was mentioning about the jurisdiction and the cashless payments is that there are processing services, but because cannabis is such a high-risk merchant already, the fact that we are now over in international waters, these services that operate in the States currently do not even want to entertain us, because when we mention Guam, they do not see us as a continental U.S. business. So we just took a high-risk business, brought it over to international water, and made it even higher, because they also have the same concern of trying to bar any laundered money from entering their services. I have tried out the service he mentioned and every other service, so I personally know that they would not entertain us. Even with just personal accounts, Zelle, Cash App, a lot of the cashless payments that's going on in the States right now, won't even entertain just Guam residents because we are deemed international.
But in other jurisdictions, it's allowable? They're able to do
They
it?
set up their own
Within their own state,
Within
right?
their own state,
Right.
they had an association, the bank, where they had created a process such as a cashless payment. The customer essentially deposits their money, so they're able to track like, hey, this customer deposited this money. Now he has a debit card that he could only be used. That's how Canapay works right now, is that the customer, similar to PayPal, you deposit your money, they're able to understand this came from a real person that gave this amount of money, and they're able to track it to the purchase of the cannabis at that store. And in those states, they use one specific system to keep all the money allocated. It doesn't matter if it came from whichever establishment. They're able to say a customer put this amount of money into the cannabis industry. This money then went to the merchant, and then now the merchant is going to withdraw or pay their employees with that money, or even the government taxes with that. So they're similar to the seed to sell. They're able to track it all the way to the first initial deposit. So that helps stops any outside money from coming in. And I wanted to also mention, this is another big hurdle for me as a business owner, because I'm very open about the hemp products that we sell to the point where my license is there. I have a stiff competition that is currently not open with what they're selling, and they accept credit cards. And as he was saying, if you want to track the quality, you have to, make it a fair playing field. Customers come to my store many times and said, hey, this is our last hope in trying a quality cannabis product that is going to provide the relief that we're looking for. When they do finally come to my store and they do try a quality cannabis product that has been monitored from seed to sell, they are able to experience the full benefit that cannabis provides medically or even recreationally as a little relief. Not everybody wants to smoke cigarettes or drink alcohol, so whether it's medicinal or adult use, a customer would want good quality product. And if we're not all on the same playing field, where I'm being barred from accepting cash payments, I cannot be let into certain business establishment where the current foot traffic is, my customers are going to be looking for somebody that accepts their credit card and is conveniently located so they don't have to go out. But with those type of businesses right now, they're not open with what they're selling to get their credit card processing service. And a lot of times if you do the research, if they're not open with that, they're not going to be doing those extra steps to ensure that they're bringing in the quality products that the customers need. Why? Because to go and get these quality products now, you have to have the proper license, or you would not be entertained, because the company and the manufacturers that produce these hemp products have these rules to make sure that nobody is tainting it or selling it illegally.
Right.
And I wanted to reflect on what he was saying about the vertical integration. It's not only a thing that will help the business owners, but it also reflects back on product quality. He is just trying to reaffirm that the product that he hopes to manufacture and the product the consumer hopes to consume or get for their family is of the best quality. And a lot of times it starts with the seed. And if the cultivator is not willing to do the extra mile that the manufacturer needs, then the product will come out tainted, it will come out of lower quality, and it might not even be something you would want to put on your shelves as a retail store.
Okay, but thank you so much for that. I just wanted to touch real quickly with the issue. I believe it's on page 81 of the rules and regs, talking about the diagram that you were mentioning earlier. And based on your reading, does this mean that it's going to be public, that information? And this is to Mr. You, John? I'm sorry, I didn't get your first name. How do you spell that?
Zandro.
Zandro.
Yes.
Zandro?
Can you repeat that question?
Zandro. Okay, yeah, so, I was talking,
you were talking
you
to
mentioned.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry?
I thought you were talking to him.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I didn't really hear your name, or, the echo in here is really bad, so I
Yeah, the
apologize
church.
for that. Zando.
Yeah.
Okay, so you talked about the diagram, the issues with that. I had concerns. That's on section, that's actually on page 81 when it comes to the diagram. And are you under the assumption that this would be public information, or is it just provided to the board as you get your license and go through the process, that this diagram is submitted to them and for their eyes only? Or do you really think this is going to go out based on the rules and reg, that it's going to be public?
I'm just worried that any kind of sensitive information like that should
Right.
be kept within the business parameters
Right.
of the whole thing. Like, let's say like a bank.
Right,
Does a
right.
bank have to like tell GRT that they're gonna go, I have a $20,000 sack of bags that I'm gonna go take this route using this car with this license plate, with this driver, with this colored car, off to this bank in this exact route
Right.
for anybody to even like know?
Right,
Yeah,
that's a
should I
concern.
let that information out?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, should I let
Yeah.
information out of my business where exactly what room is operating what? This room grows this weed, this room dries it, this room cures it, this room processes it for
Right.
consumption or whatever.
Yeah,
For anybody to go in, and plus toilets, why do anyone need to know where my toilet is?
Right. I am concerned about that. Mr. Chair, it's on page 81 of
Yeah.
the rules and regulations on this section. It was a red flag for me because of the safety issues, until we can actually get another board together to discuss how are we going to address this concern. I mean, you see it in the paper every day, you know, what's happening in our community, and this just gives them an open invitation. And I hope that that's not included into the rules and regulations for that information to be distributed out. So I greatly appreciate you bringing that up. I forgot to bring it up earlier. And thank you so much, everyone, for your testimony, and be safe out there, okay?
Thanks.
Please go ahead, Mr. Brown.
Just on that banking issue again, if we don't find a bank that will take us, we will not be able to have employees that want to come in and just receive cash payment, because anytime you deposit anything over $2,000, the bank is able to ask you, where did you get that money from? Like you were saying too, if our operations is always out there, we're literally saying, hey, we're going to go deposit $20,000, and then doing that, no bank is really, without the proper documentation, is going to be able to accept it. So if anything, you have to always consider that we want to use this to build our community and also create jobs, paying jobs that people will want to sign up for, without the risk. Thank you.
I think for jobs, the only thing is, like right now, there can be like, let's say like if you're paying an employee and they say they want to pay taxes on that, right? I think the only thing they could probably put down is like it's an odd job, like mowing a lawn, helping cut weed. It's an odd job. They can put that in taxes. That's another way they can get around that.
In light of that, the cannabis industry, even though it has its own taboo nature behind it, it is filled with very professional people that are not going to settle for an odd job title, and let alone an odd job payment. And with those type of services provided, they are in all right to ask them for the right payment. And sometimes those payments could be a consultant fee from $2,000 or setting up a full grow out for $10,000. And how are they going to explain that, and be able to bank that money, put it into their account to pay for their kids' schooling, to pay for their rent, to be able to live just like a normal day-to-day? Because if you don't do that, we're just pretty much a gray market. We are accepted in public, but we're not able to operate as a regular professional should. And a lot of the professionals coming in are coming from other industries. The edibles, you have people coming from big name kitchens or big name edible industries, confectionaries, people from the candy industries moving in. Then you also have people that's moving in from agriculture, professionals in all their set fields, and these professionals are also receiving their highest pay, and they need to explain where they're getting this money just to live their day-to-day. Thank you.
Thanks. I do have a question. So with regards to, let's say, for example, Mr. Brown, you testified saying that CanPay and other similar type of cashless systems did not want to come out and do business on Guam because they felt it's too much of a risk, we're too far away. If some sort of cashless system like CanPay or something similar were able to come out here and do something here with our banks and financial institutions here, do you think that would solve a lot of problems?
It'll solve some of the problems. First, we still need the banks to be willing to accept us as a merchant. Without having a merchant account, CanPay cannot establish an account with us because you need the bank to be able to transfer the money from them to us. And also, it still won't address the fact that I don't receive a paycheck, my employees don't receive paychecks, and then how are we going to address that issue? It all starts with being able to get the banks to approve us, as a basic merchant account, just to start getting checks in our company's name, getting a debit card to just be able to operate our business and pay our employees.
Mr. Harris, did you have something to add?
Just to add on that, I know it's kind of maybe technologically still further in the future, but cities like Miami and New York, they've set up official crypto wallets for citizens to send tax payments on gains to their official crypto wallets. So maybe Gov Guam can start looking into that direction of setting up an official wallet. I mean, Ukraine set up an official crypto wallet and they were able to generate over $70 million in donations in less than a month. And if we can do direct peer-to-peer payments to the government, then we can forego the banks for now until we can figure that system out.
That's a good point.
Because not everybody's going to want to do crypto. Onboarding people into crypto is going to be different, but it's at least another option that can be cashless.
Okay. So back to the cashless issue, perhaps the issue might be, I'm not sure, is it sounds like the banks are the ones who don't maybe want to work with the CanPay or some other similar cashless institution, cashless company. So that might be where the real issue lies. It might be between if CanPay or another similar system of cashless payment is able to negotiate and work with the banks and work out some kind of deal with the banks, that could be a potential solution. Do you think?
Yes, but it's still on the approval that the banks will entertain us as a business. What I have been told is that the fact that these banks are established by stateside banks, and they won't put their name on a cannabis business because it will heighten the risk for them as a company themselves, as financial institution, and might get them barred or uninsured by the FDIC. So we have to make it where, I understand the approval process, but we need it where we sort of nudge the banks to get these wheels rolling to start the process. Because at this moment, they're just shut everything down. And there is many banks in the States that take these payments or entertain cannabis businesses to the point where you're able to buy CBD in California and receive it in New York. It's very open already. It's once again, it's just through the processing service or the application process, but the banks here just need to start and get a set of regulations that we could start abiding by so we could get the wheels moving. As soon as we are able to establish the bank account, we can then pay our employees, pay our taxes, and also set up those cashless payments. Another thing, my other option that I also tried to purchase my own ATM, but I was denied once I said I was going to put it into my store. This is not, this is able to be able to track it immediately, but the banking services stop any form of processing ATM or a debit card reader from entering any type of cannabis establishment, and the banks also stop any cannabis business from opening any account in general.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Wright, did you have something else to add?
I did. I just wanted to actually add
Please turn on the mic.
Oh, how do I do that? Sorry. I did actually just want to add that I wanted to talk a little bit more about the stigma and hopefully, being able to have a little bit more access as far as being. For me, speaking right now, it feels a little bit more intimidating because I'm an underrepresented group as active duty military spouse, it's quite intimidating to get more involved with normalizing cannabis because of just a general, we're used to not, we're kind of conditioned a little bit. So as an active duty military spouse, I also have a unique perspective as a Gold Star spouse. My first husband was killed in Afghanistan, and the lack of support on island has been one of the main components of driving me to being a supportive person for cannabis now, because this is not what I would have ever really anticipated for myself. I just wanted to speak for the normalization of having cannabis be an option rather than, pharmaceuticals and that sort of thing. Because the rules as they're written will affect the medicinal patients. And so that is, for me, a big concern. There was something else, but I have forgotten it. Sorry.
Thank you. We can always come back to you later. Kristen, did you have something you wanted to add?
The cryptocurrency, even like I said, right, we're trying to see how fast this rolls. And at the same time, if you look up and research, I just Googled it, cryptocurrencies, there's four top businesses in cryptocurrencies, and they've been using this since 2014. So if we can somehow get this going on so that even people who are here in active duty as dependents, Canna moms, our older generation, trying to just do this in a way where we are not having to come here back and forth to kind of get this situated. We really need to look for another option. Obviously, those four cryptocurrency businesses have been doing very, very well, and it shows it there. And that is the way and the most safest way, I guess, to get the industry going.
Yes, and I know a lot of people are worried that, there's money laundering. When it comes to cryptocurrency, the blockchain records everything. Some people might think they can get away with stuff by operating in the crypto space, but once they tie your name to a wallet address, they can undo all of your activities. So this idea that we're just gonna use crypto to launder money and wash it is very, very immature, and it's kind of like the early thinkings of the early days of cryptocurrency. Kind of like the early days of the internet was kind of like dark and dirty. Same thing with crypto, but now crypto's 13 years old now, and we're not saying the government needs to accept Bitcoin. There's USDC, there's stable coins pegged to dollars. There'll always be a dollar. So even if the market crashes, you're still gonna have your stable coin value. So that's a very big option. And if you look into countries that are looking into accepting cryptocurrencies as official tender, El Salvador being one of them. China created their own digital yuan coin. And I believe Saudi Arabia accepted payment in digital yuan for their oil to China. So this is already happening on the big stage. And let's not let Guam be 10 years behind on everything like we normally are.
Please.
We can actually be one of the early adopters for this and actually grow quickly. Yes. Or the other underdeveloped islands are going to adopt this because they don't have any other option, and they're just going to supersede Guam right away, and we'll see over the next 30 years the development happening in the other areas that have lower infrastructure to develop just pass us. So I think it's definitely an area that needs a lot of research because it's intimidating, but it's a very plausible speculation that this might just take over all the payment systems in the future. So we should be looking into it.
Thank you. Ms. Pellicani.
Thank you, Senator Ridgell. I just had a few things that I wanted to finish off, if I could just for the
Take your time. I believe this is the last panel, so now you can go ahead and complete your testimony.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Just going back to, I wanted to, where I was with vertical integration. I'm so glad Mr. Mateo brought that up because the gas stations is a very, very good example of when there is only one supplier. What happens to the retailers, it doesn't matter, right? You could have 3 retailers or 4 retailers or 10. So it's a very good example of what happens when you're not controlling the amount of space horizontally, right? And so the issue with vertical integration and the idea that it was going to create monopolies is actually counterintuitive to what had been developed, which is limiting the canopy space per license was going to prevent the monopolies, right, or the oligopolies or what have you. So at 10,000 square feet, I think they've achieved that. I think that's a good number that still allows for room for craft growers, et cetera. So that's the idea with vertical integration. So I don't think it needs to be prohibited. I did also want to mention concern about the banking, if I could just chime in real quick. If we're going to leave it up to the banks, that's also an additional concern that they would be allowed to determine who would get to deposit and not in the cannabis industry. And so I just wanted to put that on the record as well. One of the concerns also in the rules, what the CCB authorizes the Department of Agriculture to be a regulatory agency for medical cannabis. That particular section is a bit concerning because I believe public health has that authority, not the CCB. So, and Senator Ridgell, you were keen to have included that in your law. And so I just wanted to note that butane extractions, I think, should be banned. I just don't want to see anybody get into any bad accidents or anything tragic to happen because of improper butane extractions. On-site consumption, I know, again, Senator Ridgell, you had the foresight to put this into the rules, but there are no rules and there are no licenses for on-site consumption contained within this, and I don't believe there is any prohibition of it, and so I'm wondering if the rules lapse into law that there would be unregulated on-site consumption because there is no mention of it really in these rules. That would be concerning. The fees exceed statutory authority, and although there is a mechanism for them to exceed that within the rules, I don't know that I'm clear on the justification on why but I don't believe that the fees are a true barrier. It's things like these guys are talking about. These are real barriers. And you can see these guys aren't big business. They're really just local guys, local startups, and we want to help them, right? The surveillance system, I'm glad these guys brought up the security issue. I don't know why it's in there, but there's an exemption that you could apply for an exemption for surveillance systems. I think this language should be struck. Whether you're a 500 square foot facility or an outdoor farmer, I don't think you should be exempt from this. Clearly, these guys will tell you that there is a security issue. There's a worker protection issue. And I also did want to address that Senator Ridgell, again, very popular today, you had actually also authored a bill because we were having problems with crop theft. And I clearly remember that. I clearly remember Mr. Wistic, and imagine that's just corn. So I'm very, very particular about worker protection and surveillance systems and that type of things being mandated by the government, at least early on. And then when we can start to ease restrictions, that would, we can revisit it then. And so throughout the rules, there are very little by way of worker protections. There are no indoor cultivation rules, so people using carbon dioxide and that type of thing, there's nothing to sort of regulate, guide. There only seem to be rules for outdoor plantations. And I'm not quite sure why this was completely neglected when probably most of the cultivators will be adopting indoor models. And I think this is a really big deal. There are also no mandates or procedures for recalls, for product recalls and that type of thing. So the There were a couple taxation issues, and I am unclear also. I just have a couple questions. If GRT will be applied to cultivators and manufacturers, I'm not sure that we're clear on that. And again, I just want to say that I think the rules, this first draft of rules that came out is fantastic. I think the CCB did a great job. I just think we're not quite there. We're just like almost, hopefully almost at the finish line. And I really do want to encourage that we just take one more pass at it. We've got public health that's got a consultant now. And maybe, you know, that could be utilized to maybe have them take one entire pass at the whole thing. I would feel better about it. And I know probably a community buy-in, you know, would be really important. So I think that's all I have. Thank you. Thank you for the extra time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ms. Pellicani. Just to, for the record, I believe you mentioned your concern with the butane being used for extraction. My understanding, my reading of the rules is they currently don't allow for butane extraction. They only allow, let me pull it up here. Canada's product manufacturing facilities may use heat, screens, presses, steam distillation, ice water, and other methods without employing solvents or gases to create keef, hashish, bubble hash, or infused dairy butter, oils, or fats derived from natural sources and other extracts. So it looks pretty clear to me that it doesn't allow for solvents to be used in the extraction.
I appreciate that. I pulled it up on the document, and maybe I pulled up a different version of the rules, but I saw that butane was included in solvent extractions. So I'll have to go back and look at it, but thank you.
And we'll confirm. We'll comb through it and make sure there's no mention of butane being allowed to be used in it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, what kind of edibles are allowed to be sold? I know there's a lot of restrictions on edibles and sorts of foods. And as a stage 4 kidney patient, I have to be precise in what I eat, and if and incorporating weed in my diet helped me get rid of like a lot of meds that I used to use, my heart meds, and that's gone. You know, it helps me with my depression, nausea, insomnia, everything like that. So if the food I can get infused with weed is limited, it doesn't seem like it's like a waste of medical cannabis, you know.
Yeah, there's definitely some restrictions here with regards to what can be used in terms of edibles, and that testimony was provided earlier based on what the restrictions are. There's a lot of things restricted with edibles, but those were drafted by the Department of Public Health, and as you heard today, they testified saying they don't like their own rules that they came up with.
Yeah. Okay, cool, thanks.
If I may, Senator Ridgell, on page 81, a cannabis-infused products manufacturer may also produce solvent-based cannabis concentrate using only the following solvents. Butane is the first one on that list. So butane, propane, CO2, ethanol, isopropanol, acetone, heptane, and pentane.
What page?
Page 81.
81?
Yes.
Oh, the same one.
Yeah, there's a lot of requirements, so even if, I would just say ban, it should be on this list, and if there is consideration to keep it on the list, that there should be some stringent guidelines as far as who can do it and how they should be certified.
Okay, thank you. Unless there are any other questions or comments, we will, of course, have to go through all of the testimony that's been provided today. I want to thank everyone for coming out to testify this morning. And if you just allow me one moment as I pull up something here. Well, that will conclude our public hearing. We will continue to accept testimony for up to 10 days. You can provide written testimony to our office. You can email it to eGraycheck, that's EGRAGEK, at guamlegislature.org. I'm looking at her to make sure I got her spelling correct for her last name. We'll continue to accept written testimony. Our committee is going to have to comb through a lot of testimony that was provided today, but that's what the purpose of public testimony is for, and I appreciate all of the testimony provided today. We will look through all the testimony and do our best to come up with answers to all of the concerns that were presented today, and hopefully we can come up with solutions for everyone. With that, this public hearing will now conclude. It is 12:28 p.m. Thank you.